That's another thing with those funds too. We have been reaching out to our other county commissioners, especially in Kane County. I don't believe they're here today, but we're also just not collaborating just regionally with the cities and everybody, but we have been reaching out and talking to our neighboring counties also on that, and they're very positive about it.
Have you talked to the congressional delegation about this?
Oh yes, yes, several times.
Yes.
The bill for this has actually made it out of committee. Congressman Stewart's ran, but after working with the biologists and Fish and Wildlife, we want to move the preferred route from the dashed line down to the blue line, and we don't anticipate any problem with our congressional people doing that. We're working with the DC attorney on that, Martin Spouse, and really the stars are aligning on this project, where we've got Fish and Wildlife actually getting excited. The roadway itself will take about 135 acres of reserve, but we're talking about bringing in thousands of additional acres into permanent protection in Washington County that would just be a boon for preserving our natural landscapes, our signature scenic landscapes, I like to call them, our recreation opportunities and things like that. This really comes together well.
One comment that I think ought to be noted, you may or may not realize that in '09, there was a lands bill passed in Washington County. And in that lands bill, it instructed the Secretary of Interior to designate an alternative or a route for the corridor. BLM has sometimes been somewhat confused on how to implement that. And so we continue to have discussions with Congress. But we feel that Congress has already agreed to this road. But now we're going back and they're going to agree to it again.
We've even have a letter from Senator Hatch saying to the BLM, the purpose of that language in that 2009 bill was to give us a northern corridor.
So you're referring to the Bennett Matheson?
Yeah.
Yeah, very familiar with that.
And what's really keen about this is we're not looking for a mid-court basketball shot from Congress. We're working administratively with the BLM, Fish and Wildlife, DNR, and we've just asked enough why questions. We've come up with answers for their questions, and so they're really intrigued. And they told us that if we turn in another application, it will not be turned down.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Other questions for the commissioner? Thank you. Then I have a question for UDOT. The request has been made. Carlos, the responsible.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this has been a locally led project for a long time, and the department has been watching and trying to help where we can. And several months ago, we thought it would be appropriate to approach the county and have a discussion with the county and the MPO about how can we help. And so we're very sensitive of not wanting to appear like we want to come in and take over. We don't want to do that, but we believe we can be good partners in helping achieve the goals that the local governments had. And we also, as we look at the traffic numbers and we look at what's going to happen in the future, we believe that this does serve a regional purpose and would in fact meet the definition of a state facility. You know, for those commissioners that may not know, the Transportation Commission, in cooperation with local governments, can decide road transfers, jurisdictional transfers. Those decisions are then taken to the legislature, and they're moved every year in a bill that's referred to as the Master Road Bill. And so the legislature has a say in this as well. But we feel this has regional purpose. We feel that with the NEPA assignment process, so basically we are now been given the authority to make decisions on the environmental documents. We could be of great assistance, and we would look forward to working with the county to help advance the goals of getting this project fully analyzed through the NEPA process, and if the decision is to proceed with a bill of alternatives, to help work with the commission on that.
All right. So the request is that UDOT help with the NEPA process, and UDOT has no objection to that request. In fact, actively pursuing that with them.
We will continue to work with the county and keep the commission up to speed on this.
Okay.
You know, as projects are defined and funding is needed to move things forward, obviously the commission is the decision maker in that area.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners, for making that, bringing this information to our attention. Other presentations, the public, please.
Good morning. My name is David Everett. I am the city manager for the city of Moab, and I'm actually here today on behalf of both the city of Moab and Grand County. Mayor Sackerson would have joined us today, but he's being honored up at the League of Cities and Towns meetings today, in fact, for his near 30 years of service to the community. So I told him he could go to that. He told me to come here. So and I'm here both to now express our ecstatic excitement about the planning money that you all are looking at possibly approving for our area. We have a lot going on in Moab and in Grand County, and we're a bit behind the 8 ball. And I think we all recognize that. We don't have big organizations in Grand County and Moab, and we've got big challenges. The changes in the visitation and traffic and the popularity, frankly, of the Arches region in the last few years even has just become, it's breathtaking how much has changed in our region in terms of people's desire to be there. The Mighty 5 campaign, the Road to Mighty campaign, and even Grand County's own Discover Moab campaign have just been, I think, wildly successful beyond people's expectations even locally. And we welcome that as a community, 100%. But it does certainly bring its challenges. And while I do look forward to working very closely with UDOT moving forward on where we can invest pretty quickly to get some pretty significant improvements happening in the UDOT world and where we're at. We also recognize in Moab and Grand County that, like I said, we're a little behind, and I think we're going to be paying a lot of attention to what happens in Washington County in particular, to watch how they've done it historically and will be doing it moving forward in terms of planning. We really need to engage in a regional mobility and transportation planning effort, and we have not, as a community, really done that. So I'm really here just to say I'm here, and we're here, and we're looking forward to thinking through what that could look like for Grand County and for Moab. We recognize that we just got to do some serious planning, and UDOT is. We really hope that UDOT will be a partner with us, and have certainly enjoyed working with Rick so far, and he's been incredibly supportive of our starting to think about this. And so, I guess I'm just here really to say I'm going to be on your radar and look forward to future conversations with you, and certainly excited to get to know you a little bit, Mr. Zanotti, and have you come hang out with us in our side of the desert. And if there are any questions or recommendations or comments from you all at this point about how we move forward, I'm certainly all ears. I've been with the city for about a year now, just so you know. I've either been a resident or a landowner in Moab for about 22 years, so I've had a chance to watch the community evolve and change in its attitude, and how that's changed over the decades it's been great to see. I think there's a really a renewed embracing of, you know what, tourism is what Moab is all about, and we're going to be okay with that. And we look forward to figuring out how to do that as best as possible, so that our reputation as a community, and frankly as our part of the reputation of the state, is that we're doing our part to make that work well on the global stage, frankly. So I have a letter here that I actually sent to Mr. Torgerson, and CC you, Mr. Zanotti, if you don't mind sharing that with your fellow commissioners, that would be great. And I'll be back. You too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you for that. We look forward to future conversations then. Are there others now that would like to address, please?
My name is Stan Smith, and I'm Mayor of Springdale. I sent you a letter. So I'm not going to take a lot of your time, because hopefully that's said a lot of things. First up, I want to thank you all for the work that and the help that you've given Springdale in the past, and hopefully you will continue to give Springdale the help that they need with our roads. And as we do that, we also want to make sure that you understand that Springdale's putting money in also out of our own pockets to excuse me, to help improve our roads and the problems that exist down in southern Utah and Springdale. UDOT has been fantastic to work with Rick and Chris, everybody down there, and we've got to know them over the last couple of years as we've been to the meetings and all the planning. Back in the early 1900s, in one of the local newspapers, there was one of the residents of Springdale was quoted as saying, "If we could only get a road up through this canyon, we could have a lot of people come and help supplement our income." So here I am 100 years later saying, if only we could, fix this problem, fix this road, we could have a lot of people. A lot of people isn't Zion National Park's problem. We're looking at probably 4.6 million people this year. My family moved down to Springdale back in 1972. I remember the first million. I remember the second million, and I've been accused of over promoting Springdale in the 4 years I've been mayor, and that I'm the cause for this last 1.5 million people coming to Zion National Park. And I told them if that was the problem, I would have been mayor back about 25 years ago, because we like the people. But it does cause problems. One of the things that we have been doing, though, is organizing and talking and collaborating with everybody else. I've invited the Superintendent Jeff Bradybaugh from Zion National Park. We work very, very closely with the projects that we're looking for. One project is not going to solve the problem down in Zion National Park or Washington County. It's going to take a lot of different things happening, and that's what we presented you with, a plan that was showing you our big vision of what we'd like to see happen, and I'm very encouraged that we're, of course, the top of the list of projects that need to be done. Our biggest thing is deciding which project is going to happen. And one of my pet project, obviously, I mean, is the transportation, the transit. And just a quick plug on that. When Zion National Park put in their shuttle service, there was a huge controversy over, whether people would use it or not. All the businesses there in Springdale were saying, well, everybody's going to stay in their car and they're not going to use the shuttle. That's just, we Americans drive our cars. And why are we going to waste all this money on this silly shuttle system that we'll just abandon? And as you know right now, it's very needed and very, very well used. And as a matter of fact, sometimes if you talk to the superintendent, he'll probably say it's overused. And I look at this transit system that we're proposing that says it will work. It just needs to be funded, and then afterwards how it's going to continue to be funded. I look at it the same way. Right now, there might be naysayers saying how we're going to waste a lot of money doing this, but I think in the long run, everybody will look at it and say, how did we survive without that transit system? The biggest thing is we do have a plan down in Washington County. We're all working together. The county commissioners have helped us to help Springdale out, and all the different organizations. We're working very well together, including the National Park, to make sure that whatever money comes to Washington County is going to be well used, and there'll be other projects that will supplement that also. So that's my whole speech. I appreciate you listening, and again, I thank you all for all that you've done for Springdale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Bradybaugh. I'm the Superintendent at Zion National Park. I want to hand out just a little chart on our visitation. Visitation has increased greatly, and we're happy to have all these visitors that come and enjoy our national park. and our other recreational lands here in southern Utah. However, as the mayor said, we need to continually keep our eye on the infrastructure and other services that are needed to support that visitation. And the recreational hotspot funding and the opportunity to study some of those possible projects are really critical. We feel very fortunate to operate in an area that has such a wonderful collaborative group of folks. Our county commissions, our town councils and mayors, our other federal and state land managers really have the best intent for all of us as a group. And as you saw from John's presentation, we have a regional collaborative that works on various things. They have subcommittees on transportation, which is applicable in this case, but also on recreational use and community character. So we're all working together to make those assets in the built environment as well as our natural and recreational assets fit together. So we're here just to let you know that we're supportive and that we are also making investments in this program as well. Our shuttle bus system that the mayor talked about, I had the good fortune in a previous tour at Zion to be involved in the planning for that and the initial implementation. And that has turned out to be an absolutely essential asset to the park and the community. It costs us about $5 million a year to operate that system. We have a loop in the town of Springdale and a loop in Zion Canyon within the park that's absolutely essential to park operations and town transportation. As the mayor pointed out, we're working on transit studies. We've installed additional parking assets, all those types of things, again, to help meet the need of the recreationists in the area. Before I close, I just wanted to mention how much we appreciate all the staff with UDOT. As the mayor said, they are part of our partnerships. Regional Director Torgerson has just been great to work with. And we do want to appreciate our good friend Jim McConnell on his retirement today. He's been a great partner and good friend. The traffic management group has helped us a lot with some of our traffic issues and problems, so we acknowledge them as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Question. Question for you.
Mr. Superintendent,
Yes.
how many transit vehicles do you have, and what are the headways? How many people does that carry on a pretty regular basis?
The headways vary during the year and also during the time of day. So peak season, peak time of day, headways are actually 4 to 6 minutes departing from the Zion Canyon Visitor Center. So once they depart there with about 70 passengers, they pick up a few more folks at the park museum. So by the time they get into the canyon, they're running about 100 people into the canyon, so on about a 5-minute headway.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. That's more people. We carry more people than many transit systems in fairly good-sized cities.
I'm sure that's true. I've ridden it. It's a great service.
Tremendous asset for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Once again, we open the microphone to presentations from the public.
Morning, Commission. My name is Breck Dockstader. I'm from Springdale and Zion Canyon. We're half the room. I grew up in Rockville and own and operate Cliff Lodge as well as some other tourism businesses down there as well, and then also representing the Zion Canyon Visitors Bureau. So we just wanted to express our support for the planning of these projects, particularly the Big Plains Road which gives us access to a lot of different solutions, particularly employment. We, as a business community, employment is a huge challenge for us, and that road, if planned and done properly, can really open up a lot of employment opportunities for us from Colorado City. So that's one thing that we really support as a business community, because it's such a challenge to staff, particularly the limited housing in Springdale. So also the technology presentation that the Washington County Economic Development Team has put forth, I think helps really address a lot of the concerns and the technology that's available as far as overcrowding and how we can really help manage visitation in a better and more effective way. So I know there's a lot of people behind me, but I just wanted to be here and express the support and appreciation for this effort. So thank you.
I think it's nice that Rockville wanted to keep the historical bridge.
Yeah, I actually grew up on the other side of that road.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, right on the other on Bridge Road, on the other side. So yeah, we certainly don't want to see that ruined. You know, Rock was a very special place,
Yes.
and so we want to make sure that's protected. But I think that there's ways to do both, and to make sure that we keep these places special, but also know that things are growing and things are changing in an effective and appropriate way.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I'm Myron Lee. I'm the director of the Dixie MPO in Washington County Metropolitan Planning Organization, and we sincerely appreciate the work that UDOT and that the Transportation Commission is doing in our area. I won't belabor the points that have already been made about the tremendous amount of visitorship that we've had in Zion National Park. Year to date, we've had over 3.2 million visitors to Zion's. That's a significant number. We anticipate, as you've heard, and we're excited to be able to have some cooperation and collaboration with all of the entities in southern Utah to make something happen there. We also appreciate what the County Commission has presented regarding the Northern Corridor. That is a key regional road that will service, we anticipate would service a tremendous need in St. George. We're in the business of at the MPO of helping to plan transportation solutions. Some of those are transit, some of them are roads, and some of them are pedestrians. And so later on in your agenda, there's an item in there to look at a pedestrian underpass to get people underneath I-15 between Dixie State University and our regional hospital. And you know, this is a project that has been on our long-range plan for quite some time, and it serves a transportation need, even though it doesn't involve cars or buses or trains or anything like that. It serves a transportation need because with that pedestrian underpass, we can move a changing demographic student body from the college to housing on the other side of I-15. And so, you know, on if you wanted to zoom in onto that, Kevin, 400 South in St. George, right underneath I-15. We've looked at that as a key connector to help students connect to both shopping, to housing, and to medical services, and we appreciate the efforts that have been shown by our Region 4 folks, by the City of St. George, and by Dixie State University to help put in a pedestrian underpass in that area. And again, we're in the business of helping people move from one point to the other in all different modes of transportation. We sincerely appreciate your cooperation and working with us in that. Any questions on that?
Questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Dixie State University has committed $600,000, and the City of St. George, yes, City of St. George has matched that with $600,000 more, and the Dixie MPO has also funded, partly funded.
Right?
So it is really good cooperation between those three entities.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Mayor Pam Leach from the town of Rockville, and I wanted to thank you for all the work that you do for the state of Utah. And I'm really pleased to see the recommendation for evaluation funding in today's presentation on the recreational hotspot to look at the areas and the projects that have been presented for these funds. And I think taking the extra time to review all of these projects and look at how they affect the various communities and the areas and what best serves the area will be very good. We support the transit plan. We also understand the need for a connector corridor between SR 59 and SR 9, but we would like to make sure that a connector corridor is properly planned and can handle all types of vehicles between those routes. There is concern about Big Plains Road. It does access recreational area, which we know needs access and needs improvement. We are concerned in Rockville that paving that road without a proper connector corridor could create some big problems for us. So we hope that that can be addressed, and we would like to work in seeing that improvements are made to that road, but we'd like to make sure that they are done in a proper manner. Again, thank you for taking the time to look that these monies are used properly and to the best advantage of the state and the areas, the communities that will benefit from them.
Questions for the mayor? Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here, and we suppose that there will be a very active dialogue with those who are looking at the expenditure of those funds. So we look forward to the input that all of you will have.
And as has been stated, there has been a wonderful collaborative group effort being done since last year that has encompassed Kane County and Washington County and all of the areas, and we've been coming together every 2 or 3 months to discuss problems that are affected, that we're all affected by, and it's been a wonderful experience, and collaboration is great, and it's, in my opinion, the best way to see that things are done for everyone's benefit. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there others that wish to address the commission from the public?
Commissioners, I'm Tina Cannon. I'm from Morgan County. I appreciate your service. I know that it's not always fun to be in these meetings. Morgan County was on the list of projects that was considered. We're kind of used to not being chosen. It's okay. We'll be. But I did want to bring out some of the issues that we are facing there. Morgan County is a small county. We don't even have a stoplight. So to be at a transportation meeting for a representing a county without a single stoplight in the whole county seems a little odd, I realize. There's our issue right there is we're a 22% growth county. We're a small county to start, but we are at 22% growth. 73% of that growth is happening in 1/7 of the county. And that's the part of the county I represent. And the part where this interchange that we've been talking about is located. That interchange we are becoming housetop rich, but business poor. And that is hard to support a school system that way. This interchange also has the opportunity to create $70 million in economic development surrounding it. It already has a development agreement surrounding it, as most of the areas in that area have, but we have a willing landowner who is willing to work with us in getting a corridor in the proper place at the proper time so that we're saving the money going into the project and also designing what that growth is going to look like at the end. Because we're a shoulder county, and we know with 2 million increase in population in Utah, we're going to take a lot of that growth. And the only thing that we can do in our community is to have a good plan, including a good transportation plan for how that looks when it's done and how we can all function as a community. People say to me all the time when they find out where I live, "Oh, you're the next Park City." That's like feeling like a deer in the headlights. Because they got all sorts of problems I don't necessarily want in my community. And that's what we're trying to get across is that, see, we're still here, we're little, we're getting stepped on. Help and keep us in mind. You're going to tour that area in your meeting in October, and we're excited to have you there to really be on the ground and see what it looks like in that half interchange. I won't make you get stuck.
You have a representative from Morgan County now that's
Yes, we do in Logan. We do.
That's very helpful.
Yes. And we appreciate that. And we will see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. It was just a short drive.
Yes, it was. And beautiful weather, too.
Are there others that wish to speak to the commission? Seeing no one else, we appreciate those that have expressed these ideas and projects to the commission. We welcome your input. As you can see, there will be an opportunity in the coming months for additional input on the various projects that concern your area, especially those in Washington County. We'll be up in Ogden next month, and so we'll be out into Morgan County and looking at those things. We appreciate very much the effort that's made by all of you to be present here in this meeting, and rest assured that your input has been well received. We appreciate you very much. Thank you for that. We now have the opportunity to hear from our FHWA partners. Brigitte Mandel is here, representing the FHWA. Brigitte, it's always good to have you in our meetings. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have 5 items for you, all very positive to talk about. On August 31st, UDOT was notified that they received approximately just over $30 million in additional obligation limitation as part of August redistribution. So that's kind of on par with our record from last year. So that's good news. The ferry boat program on September 7th, funds in about $100,000 were made available to Utah for eligible ferry services. Those funds will remain available through September of 2020. And as mentioned earlier, the Tiger program, on September 6th, USDOT issued a notice of funding opportunity for the Tiger program. $500 million is available for grants. That money will remain available through September of 2020 as well. The competitive grants will be awarded in the amounts of $5 million to $25 million. Rural areas can have a minimum amount of $1 million. The selection criteria is essentially the same as previous years. An information webinar entitled How to Compete for Tiger Grants will be held on Tuesday, September 19th. And the deadline for applications is October 16th. Congress passed a continuing resolution that will keep the government operating and funded through December 8th. This is especially good news because they did it early enough that our financial system will be up October 10th, and the funds should be available immediately. Typically, we have a little bit of delay, so that's good news. And lastly, President Trump issued a intent to nominate Mr. Paul Trombino as Federal Highway Administrator. I believe he was the previous AASHTO president and CEO for Iowa DOT. So excited about that. Any questions?
Good questions for Brigitte. Thank you for that positive report. Yes, good news. Thank you very much. It's always good to have you here. Speaking of the federal appropriations, Nathan, I think you've got a bit of a report for us that includes that $30 million that Brigitte referred to.
Thanks, Commissioner. Pleased to be here. Yeah, you go to the next slide. There have been a couple of questions asked of the Commission regarding our federal appropriation, given the first slide. And particular interest were two things. One was what happened when there was a rescission issued from DC, and what happened with the August distribution that we just currently received. So I'm going to try and address that in a simple manner for you. Kevin, from the next slide. In April, at the Transportation Commission workshop, we estimated what we thought our full apportionment from the federal highway funding would be at $360 million. Now there's a green line on this graph that's called the obligation limitation. That's usually around 7 or 8% less than what the full apportionment is. In Utah, we have worked with you over the last couple of years to create what we call an AC budget. And that AC budget is projects that we work on and develop that are above that green line in hopes of things like August distribution. And in case certain projects don't get completed, we need to make sure that we meet that green line. So we overprogram almost up to our apportionment in order to achieve that. In December, we received our actual apportionment, which was $357 million, slightly less than what we originally programmed. Then in June, there was a rescission made, and that rescission made was $7 million for the state of Utah. That's how the total rescission affected the state of Utah. And what it's doing is lowering that apportionment. Then this past month in August, we received August redistribution of $30 million. And so $30 million brought our apportionment level back up to $362 million. So there's some questions about, are we worried about the rescission? How does it affect us? If you're operating at your obligation limit, everything that's above that line is either advanced constructed, looking out to the next year, the future year, and if we fall below that line, then we would have to slow something down. As long as all the action that moves up and down stays above that line, then it would only affect us in an out year that we might have to reduce the total amount of money that we received if it's under what we originally programmed. If it's over it, then we have additional money. So Kevin, go to the next slide. So what all that means for this year is from where we started in April to where we ended up both with the rescission and the August redistribution is we're $2 million to the plus. So $2 million will be in our Transportation Solutions Fund for those projects that qualify in order to do some work that we hadn't originally planned on. But we will hit our distribution. We will be able to get all the August redistribution out as well, and we should be in good shape. Any questions?
Questions about that?
It's worthwhile waiting to get the $2 million extra, right?
Yes, and it helps our agency, the flexibility you've given with the advanced construction option that's there to fund those projects ahead of time. So we're not looking late into our season to say, well, what set of projects can we go release now early? The methodology I think that we do is very sound for us because we have the cash flow to make it work to do it in this manner.
Thanks, Dave. All right, thank you very much. Let's see, the next item on the agenda is the UDOT scoreboard. If Randy and Robert will do some reporting as well.
Alrighty, kind of tag team on what Nathan was talking about. If you can see this list here, we've advertised 24 projects since the last commission meeting, so just a little bit over a month for a total project value of $62 million. Now, that's a lot of projects to advertise in September, and you'll know that there's no way we're going to construct those this year, and that's not our intent. Matter of fact, most of these projects came from Region 3 and 4, and those are all preservation most of them are preservation projects that'll be done next spring. But it's really good to get them out to our contractors. They bid them now, knowing that they're trying to get their workload set up for next year. They give us real good pricing, and so we actually like that, and we'll see a lot of the preservation work advertised over the next few months, similar to this. Anyway, these next charts are really similar. There's not a lot of change. You can see where we've always talked about $1 billion program, and that chart on the top right shows that we've got about $1 billion program right now going on with our 174 active projects. We do end up paying out a lot every day to our contractors just because there's a lot going on. We're at about $2.5 million a day if we average it out over the month. of amount of money that we pay to our contractors, and we do that as they submit estimates. Everything is really, really good on schedule. We've had wonderful weather this last part of the summer to make sure that we keep up and all is well. And our prices do seem to be going up some. We see that, but our estimates, we take that into account. Hopefully next commission meeting, I'll have a report on actual price increases for you. We're working on that. One of the things that just to let you know, everything doesn't go up at the same rate. And matter of fact, the big items, roadway excavation, things like that, pavements, they go up, and they're significantly higher right now. So we'll have some detail for you next month to talk about those increases, which we thought would happen, and is actually a very healthy thing for the industry. Any questions?
Questions for Randy?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this morning. It's good to see you. Just grab the page. Perfect. Thank you. So you all have a PDF of the actual numbers for fatalities and crashes and how they look this year. This is where we're at with our strategic metric, our safety dashboard. We're currently at 80.5%, which represents, we've got about 20% more improvement we can make score-wise on us this year. Can we go down a little bit? And each of the 6 categories that we track, this is how, right there, be awesome. This is how we're doing. Traffic fatalities, we are at 191, excuse me, as of this morning. And, that is right at our, 190. That is right at our 2.5% decrease that we're looking for. Our goal was for this year. Serious injuries, we are running. We're meeting 100% of our reduction goal for this year to date. Traffic crashes, we're about 33% or 36% into that reduction goal that we'd like to get. We had a really heavy spring as far as crash numbers with the winter. There was a lot in January and February that happened. We've been trying to catch up to that as we go throughout the year. Internal fatalities, we're meeting our goal. Thankfully we're meeting our goal on that. Internal injuries, we're not currently in the awarded points range on that, but our numbers are improving. We can look at that in just a second. In our internal equipment damage, again, we had a very heavy January with plowing, nearly 60% more miles traveled in just January for plowing than we have normally. There was a lot of damage that happened in that period of time. Those numbers are dropping as we'll see here in just a moment. Thank you. Go down the graphs, please. Just flip down. No, a little further. Go down below the graphics, please. A little further down. Sorry. Thank you, right there. So this is what we look like on our fatalities, our traffic fatalities and the internal employee fatalities. Go down the next slide, please. You can see that employee injury rate is here on the right is dropping through the year. Talking to Chris Mabey and the folks in the regions, it looks like August is going to be lower than that. So we're making more progress towards meeting that goal. A lot of people working together on that to make sure people are behaving in a safe manner. Down one more, please. And the UDOT internal equipment damage, those numbers continue to drop, and the projections we have for right now is that August and September are looking lower than even June and July. So we're hoping to make more progress on that as we throughout the year, more hours worked and less damage happening. So again, that's a result of a lot of people in the field, taking care of the work they're doing to make sure they get to go home at the end of the day, healthy, happy, and ready to work for the next day. That's our report for the day, Commissioners. Do you have any questions? Anything I can provide for you?
Robert, the airplane crash is part of that statistic also?
So the airplane crashes are really interesting, really kind of weird nuance. The crash that we had on I-15, there were 4 fatalities with, does not count on the numbers because it did not involve a motor vehicle. The crash we had just this past week, we will count as a crash. Thankfully, everyone walked away. I guess a broken pinky is the worst of that. The pictures don't look like that would be the worst of it, but that would show up as a crash on our records because of the fault of the vehicle.
Robert, apparently there was a fatality in Logan Canyon on Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
A tanker rollover.
Yes, sir.
Do we know anything about what caused that?
I don't. At this point, I have not talked to any of the troopers or any of the officers that investigated that. I do know that the driver was not buckled at this point. That's, our numbers on buckling, we got those in, and we're running about 89% to this date. That's what our last survey is showing. But when I looked at the numbers this morning on, how does that look in our fatalities, 55% of our fatalities year to date are confirmed not buckled. That's up a little bit from this time last year, if you think about that. As I thought about that, our numbers are going down, our fatality numbers are going down, the number of people buckling are going up, so I would expect to see that trend continue, that we will see more and more of our fatalities involving people that did not buckle, because that population is not shrinking as fast as, it's not shrinking the same rate that those that are wearing the seatbelts are growing.
Robert, the 89 is an increase in the amount of seatbelt usage, and the percentage you gave is if you take out the pedestrians, motorcyclists, and bicycles.
That is, I should have added that provide. Thank you. So that's of those that had the opportunity to buckle up in a fatal crash, 51% chose not to. Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner?
Thank you very much. Now we have a report and discussion on the express lane operation. Did any of you happen to hear the interesting talk that was given last Sunday about the HOV lane? Yes. Just kind of fascinating that one of the LDS Church officials designated the HOV lane as humility, obedience, and virtue. It was very interesting. He said he had ruined our ability now to ride on I-15 because every time we see HOV, we'll think of religious things instead of high occupancy vehicles. But it was really a fascinating, interesting way to do it. Please, let's talk about those express lanes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Rob Clayton. I'm the Director of Traffic Management for UDOT. And I'm going to give you a program update for the express lanes. It's going to be hard to follow that introduction. But, can I? You can use that. Yes. Okay. Maybe before we begin, I just want to provide some context of the express lane, its purpose, and what we're trying to achieve. That express lane, the first priority is for high occupant vehicles. And we want to maintain a high quality of traffic flow in that lane to encourage people to make the choice to carpool. Because that not only helps flow in, it helps flow across all the lanes, general purpose and HOV. And then of course we allow other users to access that lane to take advantage of available capacity that's left over because not enough people are converting to carpool. So just as context. The outline for today, I'm going to talk about performance, what's going on today, and then look at trends for the speed and the tolls. We're going to talk about the theory behind traffic flow and how speed relates to volume, and look at how our toll rate compares regionally to similar systems. And then we're going to talk about a proposal that we have for the toll rate. So the performance, these are the bounds of our analysis. We looked at the southbound section of I-15 from Salt Lake, 1300 south down to the southern end of the valley, to about Bangor Highway. We took a solid chunk of data that included April, May, and June of this year. Excuse me. So 3 months of data, and we looked at Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So that gets rid of anomalies that tend to happen on weekends, days, and activity. And then we looked at the PM peak period from 3 to 7 p.m. So this is a lot of data that we use to produce these averages that you'll see. It's good, solid information. So I'm going to step through some time frames. The time frame from 3 to 7 in 15-minute increments. This is a busy chart, but just to orient you, the graph on the upper left shows, the black line shows the average speed in the express lane. The blue that surrounds the black line are the speeds that are the 85th and 15th percentile speeds, and I know that's jargon, but essentially what that is it encompasses 70% of the speeds that we see in the express lane. So there's only 15% of traffic that's going faster than the top end of the boundary and 15% that's going lower. So that's a good representation of the speeds in that lane. The red line is the speed of the adjacent general purpose lanes, the average. The yellow line is our target of 55 miles per hour. That's the goal that we've set for ourselves for express lane operation.
During that peak period.
We'd like to maintain 55 throughout as our goal.
55 miles an hour, I thought the speed limit along there was 70.
It is, well, it is, but reasonably, and actually, interestingly enough, the maximum capacity of a traffic lane is actually right around 55 or 60 miles per hour, and not at that free flow speed. But realistically, as congestion builds, we can't keep it flowing at that rate, and
well, and that's the reason I asked. This was, the 55 is during the 3 to 7 p.m.
Correct.
Okay. That's what I was asking for the clarification. So your 55 is during the peak period, not during the off-peak period.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Then on the right, you can see the average toll that's being charged in this time frame, in this 15-minute segment of time, in the Salt Lake zone and the South Valley zone. And then on the map on the bottom, you can see where those zones lie. I mentioned earlier, it goes from 1300 South down to Bangor Highway. So here at 3 p.m., we're flowing very well. The band that's around the express lane is nice and tight, so that means it's not varying a whole lot. It's consistently flowing well, and you would expect that at 3 o'clock. At 3:15, essentially free flow still. The tolls are starting to rise in the zones, and the algorithm that produces the toll rate looks forward, and it sees trends in the congestion, and it tries to prevent the breakdown. And so the toll rate tends to increase in advance of the actual congestion that occurs. So you'll see that the toll begins to jump up. It happens ahead of the congestion. So at 3:30, now our speeds are starting to drop, leading into the peak hour. The general purpose lanes have now hit that 55 mile per hour target. 3:45 is where our express lane average reaches our goal for a significant portion of the study area here in most of the Salt Lake zone. By 4 o'clock, we're below our goal, and the average toll that's charged has reached nearly $1, essentially $1 in both of those zones.
Rob, among those traveling in the commuter lane path lanes, what percentage are HOV and what percentage are paying the toll with the single driver?
It's about half is HOV, and about 25% are paying the toll.
Thank you.
What about the other 25%?
The other 25% are violators and fuel vehicles and buses and motorcycles. Okay, so by 4:30, the speeds in both lanes have dipped significantly. We're down around 35 miles per hour. The toll is still pegged at $1 in both of those zones. 4:45, continued degradation. 5 o'clock, same story. 5:15 is when it bottoms out. The average in the express lane reaches a low of about 31 miles per hour. Our tolls are still pegged at $1. And you can see that the extent of this congestion reaches from 1300 South all the way down to about 90th South, 90th, 106 South area. 5:30 starts a little bit of the recovery, but we're still down quite a ways. 5:45, we're starting to recover as we come towards the end of the peak period. 6 o'clock, recovery is continuing. Our toll begins to inch below $1, the maximum toll in the Salt Lake zone, but we're still at $1 in the South Valley zone. It's interesting to note in the data that the express lane recovers much quicker than the general purpose lanes. You see that the gap between the red and the black line is wider. 6:15, we're almost back to our goal. The tolls are starting to drop again from the $1 maximum. And by 6:30, we're back at our meeting our target in that entire length. And 6:45, the express lane is operating essentially near free flow. The general purpose lanes are still recovering, and that brings us to the end of the peak period. So that gives you some context of what's happening in that lane as far as speeds go. Here's a look at the trend over the last 3 years, and this is interesting because you can see the effect of the Point project. In 2015, there was a significant bottleneck at the south end of the valley, and so you see the impact that had there. And the data is a little bit skewed because of that. But in 2016, when it opened, it revealed that the new bottleneck in the express lane was right around 4,500 South. You can see the speed drops to there, and then it's throttled from there down to the south end of the valley. And we don't see any kind of a rebound in 2017. So the express lane speeds are deteriorated, and they're not getting better. They're getting worse. Here's another way of looking at the situation. This is the average toll that's charged by time of day in each of the zones. So in the Salt Lake zone, in that red line shows 2015, and the maximum toll is charged from about 4:15 to about 5:30, with a dip in the middle. In 2016, the dip is gone and the shoulders widen a little bit, and in 2017, it's the maximum toll from about 4 to 6 p.m. With a similar story in the South Valley zone. So what's going on here? And I couldn't resist the temptation to get a little technical. And good luck. Data. This is data. So this is actual data from I-15, and this is the speed flow curve, we call it. When you imagine that you're starting in the upper left, and as volume is low, then the speeds can be high. So these are times when you're one of the few cars out on the roads. Nothing is impeding you, and you can move at your free flow speed. And then as the volumes build, then you move to the right along that upper part of the curve, and then you reach a critical point where you can't add any more volume without negatively affecting the speed, and then it breaks down, and then you go to the bottom side of the curve. A facility that's operating well never goes to that bottom part of the curve. You would only be along the top. And so this is the effect of volume. And so the issue that we have in the express lane is a volume issue. There's too many vehicles in that lane to maintain the level of service that we would like to provide. So did I explain that okay? Did everybody stay with me? So here's our ability to influence volume. Here are the tools that we have. For HOV, there's 2+ required for access, so that limits that. The clean fuel vehicles are capped at 6,650 currently. Single occupant vehicle violators, that's influenced through enforcement and education. And the single occupant vehicle transponders, that's influenced through varying the toll rate that's charged up to the maximum. Those are the tools that we have to control the volume in that lane. So as you look at our system and compare it to others that are around the in our region, we wanted to see how we compared, and systems vary in the length that tolls are charged, and so we looked at it on a per mile basis, the maximum toll rate per mile, and there's some systems in California and Washington that are between 40 and 60 cents a mile, and then all the way up to $1.40 for I-10 and I-110 in California. And our system is approximately 10 cents per mile when you look at that comparison there. So in summary, the peak hour express lane speeds are below our goal. We're charging the maximum toll rate for most of the peak period. And the length of time per day that the maximum toll rate is being charged is expanding. And our maximum toll rate is per mile is low relative to similar systems. So we'd like to propose for discussion increasing the maximum toll per zone from $1 to $2, which would take us to approximately 20 cents per mile. And we anticipate that that would have the effect of reducing the volume of vehicles that are accessing the lane through the transponder as a single occupant vehicle, and hope that that reduction in volume will result in an increase in level service.
We'd still be well below the regional average, even at $2.
That's correct.
Well, I'm not sure that $2 is enough. I'd like to build in a little bit of cushion, maybe recommend $2.50, $3. The legislature's going to weigh in on this too, but I'd like not to cut us off because we did that before, and it kind of we have this problem, and I don't know if the rest of the commission how they feel about it, but I would be happy to go to $2.50 to $3.
Well, that's the only effective tool that we have to try to fix the problem.
Well, Commissioner, we could study that and report back at the next meeting.
Yeah, you could. I mean, I'm just wondering how the rest of the commission feels right now about that. We've talked tolls in the past, that's for sure. Cam hasn't weighed in yet, but
Everybody knows where I'm at on the tolls, without a doubt. I've made that clear for several years.
Are you with Megan on the rate?
No, I'm a little higher than Megan.
I don't think $1 is going to be much of a deterrent. That's $20 a month for people who think they can get there a little bit faster. I just don't think $1 is much of a deterrent. If that's what we're trying to do.
What does your crystal ball tell you the impact of these rate increases might be on the problem?
It's interesting. The real way to answer your question is through a kind of a socioeconomic study that would be specific to our area, and it has to do with people's willingness to pay and its influence on their decision making. And so it's really hard to anticipate that without investing that time and money in that study. But I personally, I like the idea of taking incremental, responsible steps, possibly up to a higher maximum, if that's what's desired, and then seeing what the impact of those incremental steps might be.
Well, I do think that Meg is correct in that if we move it a little higher, we at least have the flexibility of testing those limits. And if we get too far, we can always back down. But
and the legislature will weigh in. Is that what
that's
the director is going to say?
Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the conversation and the interest in Rob's technical presentation. We love this stuff. I hear you. Let us put some thought to maybe how we might address this in a what Rob called a responsible step way, and come back next month. The process here really is the commission has the authority to set that toll rate, but then that decision goes to the legislature, and as part of our appropriation process, we spend a good part of the legislative session working through appropriations on all of our line items. This would end up having to be approved as part of what we call the fee schedule on our appropriations bill. So yes, Commissioner Holberg's right; it would be considered as part of the legislative process. So if in October you make a decision, one way or another, based on the new information that Rob can bring forward, the legislature would still have to act, and we wouldn't be able to enact a change in that rate until after if they make a decision, and then normally those become effective. It's around the 10th of May. So just to give you an idea of the steps.
Carlos, what is your sense of what the legislators might react to if we doubled or even tripled our recommendation? Would there be a lot of pushback on that?
It's hard for me to figure what the full body would how they would react to this. I think if it was if we put together a well thought through process that involved public open decision making and might involve some incremental steps to see what that reaction to those prices would be. Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to make money. What we're trying to do is we're trying to move the most people we can. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. We are a public agency, but our goal is to move as many people as possible. And as you saw, if we can maintain that laminar flow in the, so if you think about water today, the laminar flow in that express lane, we can move more people. And if we're moving more people, we can hopefully motivate more people to carpool because they can see that their neighbor just passed them by because they were traveling with other neighbors. We're going to be able to be more effective use of our transportation system. So we appreciate the challenge that Commissioner Holbrook and Mr. Chairman that you bring up. Let us think this through and maybe come back with a proposal next month that might address what I think are valid concerns about having an appropriate tool to influence those behaviors.
I should think that the comparisons with neighboring states and their rates would be quite influential. It certainly affects me as I look at the data. Even if we doubled it, we're still well below the closest California rate that's shown here.
We can learn a lot from other states, but as I often am reminded, and sometimes I think we always appreciate, we're not California. Right. So we can be informed by that, but I don't think it should be the single driver behind a decision.
Certainly not. I do think, however, that going from 10 cents a mile to 20 cents a mile will help. I don't think it's going to deter a lot. It would be very interesting to see what happens in a similar study that 4 to 6 p.m. where everybody's paying the max anyway, to see if maybe that slope kind of softens the shoulders just a little bit.
That would be very valuable data
to see what happens.
We decide to recommend, and the legislature goes along with it.
And so I think
and
as Rob
you'd get some real hard data showing the impact of that adjustment.
Well, this is pretty.
And as Rob mentioned, that incremental approach might be a way to do this.
Right, and that's basically what I was saying. Cannot do that. I'm not surprised about that. I'm glad we're not playing poker. But you had something, Danny.
Well, in any way that you look at this, I'm always cautious about safety, people's lives. I'm not in favor of raising tolls just to raise tolls. But if your studies show that we can manage people's time better and keep them safely moving down the road at a safe speed, then I'm all for it. But I think that ought to be the factor that determines whether the prices need to go up or not.
Well, yeah, and that's what this study basically said.
I would be also interested in the related lanes, because if we take some of the traffic out of the HOV lane, that puts them into the other lanes. So the comparative speeds of those two, it's not just the HOV lane maintaining it somewhere near the 55, but do we degrade the surrounding lanes to the point where then you get the occasional person that will dart out of and be the other lanes and become an SOB violator? Yeah, they're going to be a single. Yeah, I better spell that out. A single occupant vehicle crossing the double lines, which I have seen as I'm driving in the HOV lanes. They'll dart out in front of you. So I'm going at 55 or 60 or whatever the flow is, and all of a sudden somebody a football field ahead of me begins to accelerate into the lane across the double lines. That creates a hazard. So it's not just the speed of the HOV lanes. It's what happens to the surrounding lanes as well that I think we ought to be cognizant of in the study.
You're right, Commissioner, and we could also maybe next time give you a report on our efforts along the lines of education and enforcement and how we're trying to target those kind of behaviors that you're talking about. We could bring
Yes,
that
thank
to
you.
next time.
Thank you.
So the key word is laminar flow now?
Wow.
No, I'm interested.
I don't know if I made Rob cringe when I said that, but it was great.
He's pretty deadpan.
So what are we proposing here? Is there any request or action? I think this is just
Right.
information at this point.
And they're gonna respond.
For discussion.
Okay. I think you kind of get the sense of the commission, at least tipping down on this side, that raising it is not against our will.
Mr. Chairman, really, our goal was not only this discussion here, but ensuring that we have discussions, the public has an opportunity
Right.
to understand what we're thinking and can react and provide, thoughts if they care to. But it's all part of the public decision-making process that is so important in this type of situation. So we wanted to start that this month, continue it next month, and that's why today we're not asking for any decisions.
Question, Carl. No, we have almost the longest HOV lane in America, and isn't it going to get longer? And doesn't that make it a test track for the rest of the world to watch as to how we manage people and movement?
You're correct on all those. It's true. Our system is the longest continuous system in the country that I'm aware of.
Well, I think it's cool. I get on, I go the full length every time.
And you have funded a project to continue it northward on I-15. Currently, it goes up to Hillfield Road, and you funded a project to take it up to I-84. I can't remember what year Chris is going to have that done.
He's going to have it done in 2020.
So you thought by sitting in the farthest back dark corner, you would be
sitting there. Let me tell you when Chris is going to have that done.
2020, Chris says.
Okay.
Can I add one thing real quick?
Please.
I think it's important, and Rob touched on this a little bit, but if you go back a couple slides, the primary goal here is to keep number one. It's an HOV lane. We want to encourage people not to pay more tolls, but to get a buddy in their car with them and take that car out of the other lane and put two people in the HOV lane. So the toll is there to encourage them to carpool, not to make money, not to collect money or anything like that. That's the goal behind this, and I think that's what we need to keep as our primary focus is let's put more people in that lane in fewer cars on I-15. So you could see one result could be people moving out of this lane into the general purpose lanes, but they might decide to pick up their neighbor and stay in that lane actually reducing the number of vehicles in the general.
Hopefully, that's what will happen.
That's the
reason
goal
why I
behind
think
it.
the comparison of the other lanes is as important as the speed in the HOV lane.
Correct. Or spread out the peak as well. If it's $2 in the peak, maybe you go earlier, maybe you go late. And I think it's important to know that we told this by sections. So for example, I drive from Spanish Fork up. I go through 4 sections. I would get told 4 times, so that's an extra potentially $4. But I can choose to not go into 2 of those, right? I mean, it is per mile, but it is by section, so it is $1 per section, not $1 per mile. So there are a lot of opportunities to do this, but we want to make sure that we are influencing the HOV, not necessarily charging people.
Well, no.
Right.
And if we weren't clear.
No, I just want to be clear for the whole record that we focus primarily on fees, but the focus is definitely on the HOV and increasing that. Yeah, and the more people we can put in fewer cars there, the safer the whole system could be. To Commissioner Brown's point.
That makes me think of another thing. I see people that I watch, they panic. They didn't plan ahead. They don't know where the next opening is going to be to cross where the spot line is. Is there something on that center line that lets them know how far it is to the next opening gate? And am I not reading that?
It says a half mile to the next exit.
Yeah, but sometimes you miss it.
Yeah. Well, they must only be this big.
No, they're fairly sizable.
3 by 5.
Yeah, they're there.
They're taller than me.
Taller than you? That's really tall.
Thank you.
Well, I think the sense of the commission is let's do some additional study. I don't hear any real negative about the possibility of increasing. Let's make sure we're doing it in the right way with the right information.
Thank you.
Right input. Thank you.
I have one question, Rob. Kevin, would you please go back to the 3 years comparison chart or graph? Right there. Rob, recent construction of 106 is not affecting adversely any of your studies?
Of 106.
Yeah, the construction we have in the 106 South.
Oh.
How come it's not changing anything?
You mean right? No, it didn't.
This was
only goes
April,
through
May, and June.
Oh, okay. So that's fine.
This was April, May, and June, and the 106 got started later this. And now it's closed down for another week or something like
Makes
that.
sense. Okay, thank you.
I'm sure that has an impact.
That's an impact.
Well, thank you very much for all of that. Now we get into the real business items where we take some action and spend some money. So we have item number 9, a consent agenda. You should have had the opportunity to review both the minutes of our Garden City meeting as well as the return of, I think I remember it's $7,552,000 back into our coffers for redistribution from funding adjustments. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Move to approve.
I don't care.
Second.
Give it away.
All right, I'll move.
Wayne moved, Danny seconded the approval of the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Let's move then to the program development bill. Number of items to be considered here.
Mr. Chairman, you were not there yesterday, but dollar bill is no longer dollar bill. As of 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, he's promoted to grandpa bill.
So it's 100 now.
It's a $100 bill.
Grand bill.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
So I will cover the program development items, STIP amendment number 11. So you'll see with this being 11, we have our STIP that is out to FTA and FHWA for approval. So we'll start the process again come October. So this is the last one for this current STIP, so which is good. So item number 10A-1. This is a recommendation from Region 1. They're requesting approval to add a new project. This new project would reconfigure the railroad crossing at 4800 South, 2700 West in Roy. If you go one more page back, it's just there's a good image that shows where this T intersection is in relation to the railroad tracks that are just to the east of that intersection. So they would like to reconfigure this intersection to make it more safe. They're bringing FHWA hazard elimination funds to this project. It would be for $600,000. And so we'd like to seek approval to add the railroad crossing at 4800 South and 2700 West in Roy to the STIP as detailed and fund it with those funds.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that this project for $600,000 be added. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, that one's passed.
Okay, thank you. Next one is 10A-2. This is a Region 2 request. The request is approval to transfer $10.8 million of state bridge funds from the 2019 Bridge Preservation Program, as well as $309,000 of state ATMS funds into the I-15 southbound 123rd South to SR 201 project. This is the project that is adding a lane in the southbound direction. Thought it would be best to be able to do the preservation work on the structures in that same limits.
We're doing it.
Yes, for the additional 10.8 million, and then the ATMS money is to do some replacement of 3 overhead VMS signs that are already scheduled for their standard life replacement. So we'd like to seek approval to transfer 10.8 million of state bridge funds from the 2019 Bridge Preservation Program and 309,000 of state ATMS funds to the I-15 southbound 123rd South to 201 project as detailed.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that this funding addition for I-15 up in Salt Lake County be approved. Any further discussion or questions?
Well, can I just ask a question? So if these funds were set aside for bridge funds in 2019, we're saying that we're not going to need those then?
They need to do the preservation anyways, and so they just want to do it at the same time with this project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, this time.
Thank you.
Further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, that's been approved.
Next item is 10A-3. This is a request from Region 3. This is approval to transfer 1.2 million in funding from the SR 265 and US 89 Parkway and State Street Grade Separation Environmental Project to the Provo-Orem Transportation Improvement Project. This transfer partially assists UDOT in meeting its obligation to UTA for future light rail over SR 92. The need for the additional funding is due to unanticipated increase in the cost of right-of-way. It also provides for the appropriate amount of contingency in this project. The project from which the funding is coming from was originally funded 1.5 million of TIP funding during the 2016 STIP process. Since that time, the region has completed pre-NEPA planning work with the city and property owners. While the group is still supportive of the concept of a grade separated interchange there, they have concluded it's not the right time to start the environmental work. So they still would like to have that in the long range plan, but just not proceeding now with the environmental. We had a couple of maps that shows the project first of where the funding would go into, and then the project that the environmental work, which would be postponed. So the action is approval to transfer 1.25 or 1.2 million from the SR 265 and US 89 Parkway and State Street Grade Separation Environmental Project as detailed.
I'll entertain a motion.
So
Move to approve. Megan, always.
It's all right.
Megan moves.
We are
Wayne seconds. You may remember that we had looked at this intersection in Orem. It's the one right by the State Street and the University Parkway. And we were going to do an environmental, but all of the parties have agreed that now is not the time to pursue that. And so rather than leave this money there, assigned to that project, we would reassign this money to the active project in the area, which is the BRT route. And in conjunction with UTA and the eventual overpass over 92 up in the Lehigh area. But it's just a reallocation of the funds basically in the same area, but just delaying the other project. Any further questions, please?
Mr. Chairman, the question is, that second paragraph, is there any question about me voting on this issue? Because of UTA?
I wouldn't think so.
Well, I better ask just in case.
I do not see a conflict there at all.
Okay.
I don't see.
I
Not
didn't
for
either.
what they're doing, you know.
But you guys are smarter than me.
I don't think so.
That being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that's been approved.
The next item is 10A-4. This is a Region 4 request. This was mentioned earlier today by Myron of the underpass under I-15 in St. George area at the 400 South location. The amount of funding that is coming was also mentioned, $600,000 from Dixie, St. George City, $600,000, and Dixie MPO, $200,000, and then UDOT would bring the additional $1.4 million from their preservation and rehabilitation and deobligation pots to make this happen. Total project cost is $2.8 million. We've got several letters of support that are included in the packet. We've got Dixie State University, St. George Mayor, Dixie MPO, and Southern Utah Bicycle Alliance email recommendation. So on the proposal, we'd like to seek approval to add the 400 South pedestrian bicycle underpass in St. George project to the 2017-2022 STIP as detailed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this underpass be added to the STIP. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Go get them, Dixie State. Keep those students safe. How's the growth down there, Dixie State?
They're growing in leaps and bounds.
What's the student population there now?
They've gone from a 5,000 student population about 4 years ago to now they're approaching 9,000 students.
Wow.
They anticipate to be 15,000 students by 2022.
Excellent. Great. This will help.
Okay, next item is 10A-5. This is Region 4 request. It's the SR9 project, which was recently opened for bids on September 7th. The project received 4 bids. The low bid came in 21.1% over the engineer's estimate. Region 4 has reviewed the bids and feels that UDOT should award the contract to the lowest bidder. In order for this contract to be awarded and to start construction as soon as possible, they're needing an additional $2 million of NHPP NHS funds from their deobligation funds that they have. This will allow the contract to be awarded as well as provide sufficient construction engineering budget as well as contingency in the project to get it to go. We've got a map of that location on SR9 where that project is. And so we'd like to seek approval to add the additional funding to the SR9 Rockville Design National Park project as detailed.
Motion to approve is explained.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Any questions? I have a question. How did we miss that by 21%?
I'm going to let Region 4 grab that one.
Thank you for that question.
And that 21% just jumped out at me, Rick. What happened?
Well, what happened? We actually, our estimate was actually at about that level. We knew we had to get this project to construction this fall, so we decided to bid that project and see if it's a winter work. So we thought there might be an opportunity for winter work and a better price down there, but we weren't sure. And because this could be an opportunity for contractors on the Wasatch Front. We've talked to several of them to potentially go down and instead of laying the people off and go down into that better climate and actually bid that
location, and we could receive a pretty good bid. So it was kind of back and forth which way we could get this, but we bid it last Thursday, and the estimate came in higher than what we expected it would be.
Rick?
Yep.
Does that mean that the contractors are pretty active and they've got lots of business right now, and so they're not really looking for a lower cost alternative?
It could be. The piece that came in higher was we have a lot of concrete on this job with the extra sidewalk width.
Okay.
And the economy in St. George, the feedback we're getting from the contractors is there wasn't a lot of interest to get in there and do the concrete work. So they had the challenge getting contractors. The price for the concrete came in a lot higher than what we anticipated it was going to come in at. So, I mean, it shows that the economy in that whole St. George area is certainly growing and pushing heavy, and to get contractors over there in this area for all that concrete work was a challenge for them.
Is the concrete made fairly locally?
Yeah, it's in Hurricane and in St. George. There's multiple plants down there.
As they were estimating the project, they get to a point and they say, oh, it's going to be tight. We could come to the commission, put money in there, thinking that maybe the bids will come in high, or maybe we'll get a good bid and go forward. They chose the second to go, let's get get it a chance, and maybe there's an opportunity to get a lower bid that would be below our estimate. We knew that coming into it, we were going to have potentially an issue. Rick made a call to me and said, hey, let's put a placeholder on the commission agenda item, on the commission agenda just in case. So we knew we were going to be tight. Probably 21 is a little bit higher than we anticipated, but we knew we were going to be tight. So I don't think that 21 is really the real number. It's probably less than that. But we think we got a good bid now, and we're certainly willing to ready to get going in spring.
It certainly seems like a project that is required, really needed to get done.
Well, absolutely, and we're trying to do it in the off season as well for Zions and the park to deal with the business community, and we've been working with them heavy, and so the construction.
When did you start this construction?
If we award this if we get the funding, we award this on Monday. The contractor is planned to start,
right away,
as soon as they can get their contract in place and their bonding in place.
How long will it take them?
We're hopeful that. Kirk, you know what the estimated time frame was? We're trying to get out of there before the heavy, the main
Next
part
spring?
of the next spring is what.
Okay.
In March.
Huh?
October 16th is when we're going to get in there.
April 15th is, I guess.
Come on, Jimmy, one last time. Come on.
But it's a lot of work to get done in that amount of time.
It's Zion's visitation. I'm just looking at the green columns here, the lowest columns. At least we're working in the lowest visitation
That's
time.
exactly what was critical to put
That's
this
the
as a
reason why I
standing item
asked,
on here.
will we be done by the time these numbers begin to ramp up again in the spring?
That's what the whole goal was. This whole project has been built around those green sections that you see on that chart, and that's why we had to have it as a standing item. We put the bid as last Thursday to make sure it happened there, because we couldn't wait another month to get to you guys to actually put an item in front of you. So the bid came in last Thursday, and that's what it was, and we're seeking that to keep this thing on schedule and get this thing constructed as soon as we can.
Thank you. Mayor, you had a comment.
Just saying that the businesses understand it's going to be a hardship for all of us, but they united and said whatever we can do to help this project move along. We're totally behind UDOT, and they've been great to work with, and so everything we can do, we're going to do it.
All right, we have had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, next item is 10A-6.
Start pouring the concrete down there.
This is the WFRC projects, Sugar House streetcar double track project combination. WFRC requests approval to combine the Sugar House streetcar double track 700 East to 800 East project into the Sugar House streetcar double track 500 East to 600 East project, as well as add an additional $4 million of Salt Lake County funds for a new project value of just over $6 million. What these two projects do, it creates a a section of track that is doubled in the middle that allows the two cars to pass each other, decreasing their headways. This project was identified as a priority for Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, South Salt Lake, and UTA. Salt Lake County has recently approved $4 million to make up the shortfall for this project to move forward. And so we just need approval to combine the Sugar House streetcar double track 700 East, 800 East project into the Sugar House streetcar double track 500 East to 600 East project, and add $4 million of Salt Lake County funds as detailed.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that this WFRC project combination be approved. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
The next item is 10A-7. This also is it's a UTA and a WFRC request, new projects. The first one is a Tiger grant that was received for $20 million. There's the acronym right there.
Could we change that to Wolverine? It's concerned from the LSU Tigers.
So there was a group of cities, including UTA, that got together that pursued this Tiger grant. They were successful in getting it. The project is the first mile, last mile, basically making the connections to the transit systems where that gap is. There are several projects within this program that would address those issues in their area. The other one is UTA's Front Runner Enhanced Automatic Train Control System, or ETC, Positive Train Control PTC. This project will design and test a two-step no-code proceed system to assure safe operation of UTA's Front Runner. And it allows them to stop the train without the engineer remotely.
Kind of like the cars these days, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah. The local match and remain project amount for the PTC implementation is funded by UTA local dollars. So we'd like to seek approval to add the Tiger 8 First Mile Last Mile program, as well as the UTA Front Runner EATC PTC project for the 2017-2022 STEP.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Been seconded that these projects be approved. Any further discussion or questions? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
And then the last item under STIP Amendment number 11 is 10A-8. This is the SR 143 project. This project could begin construction when intense flooding occurred due to the ground being charred, barren, and unable to absorb the water due to the Bryan Head fire that we had this last summer. We've got a couple of good pictures here that show the erosion, or maybe I'd call them bad pictures. A couple of bad pictures that show the erosion that occurred. Accurate pictures of the need that is there. The original scope was to install 3 separate but smaller MSE walls. The project will now need to include 1 large MSE wall with gating and basket grade structures to bring the stream bed flow line back up about 8 feet. Additional roadway work will also be needed to be included. They're requesting to add about 600, or not about, they're asking to add 600,000 of STP funds from the master plan they have. With the proposed additional funding, the new project value would be 1.8 million. And they anticipate this being done this fall.
It needs to be done.
I move to approve.
Yes, gee, I wonder why.
Second with a question though from Rick. Is 600 going to be enough? Because we had 3 more rains after that.
And not counting today.
Yesterday we had to put a whole bunch of boulders at the top of this because all the storm yesterday was getting very, very close to the road, and our guys were actually able to save the roadway right there. So this, like we said, the flow line is lowered about 7 feet from where it was before. We actually have a contractor on staff, so this would be a change order. With this funding approval, we'd actually change order it in. We had Walker do a new design with a new flow line, so this incorporates that. The goal is to get this constructed now so that we can get this back up and the barrier system in place before winter comes.
Before winter time, yeah.
So that we can snowplow in this canyon. And do
600
everything.
going to be enough.
That was the estimate that we got back from the new design and working with the contractor. So that's we.
How long ago was that?
That was about 3 weeks ago. So we think this is kind of settled down with the bedrock and stuff. So we're hoping it doesn't lower the flow line anymore with the new channels or the new flows that are coming down. But we'll have to watch that. I mean, this is an active construction project right now with some serious flooding that's occurring in the canyon.
But we're going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And if we need to find more money, we will be back with the commission to make sure we do the right thing.
Yeah, this gets us moving forward. If we can get this design in place with the current conditions that are there, we think this will work. And if the conditions change, we're going to have to reevaluate quickly again and try to get back.
For the future reference, Carlos, so Mr. Chairman, can we have a friendly amendment to increase the supplemental request in this setting?
Well, we would have to.
We would have to make sure there's actually the money there.
Yeah, I was going to say, we would have to identify
transportation solutions right now. Yeah, we've held some money there.
I would like to increase it, if you don't mind, out of the friendly amendment to go to 700 at this point. But the idea, because the bids were 3 weeks ago, and we had a major rains last 3 days. And it's possible
is that funding available?
Yes. In our transportation solutions spot, we would have that money in there. That's the power of this transportation solutions.
Do I hear a motion for the 700,000?
Yes.
Do I hear 800,000?
He's retired. Don't listen to him.
Can I ask another question about this too? Does the adjustments that you're making here, does that help eliminate the flooding that's happening all the way down towards I-15?
This just gets it by this critical. I mean, we got a big cliff there. We took the cliff face off with our maintenance forces last year in this zone. You can see up in the top left of there. So this is a really sharp bend in Heroin Canyon. We moved the cliff back with some maintenance force work, and then got a contractor in here because we had an old wall right here that was felling. So this whole thing was kind of safety driven to get the old wall out, build a new wall, reestablish some width on the roadway with a concrete barrier system. So this was kind of irrelevant of the flood or the fire and everything else. It's just we were right in the middle of construction when the fire had happened, and now we're dealing with the after effect.
So I second the amended motion, 700,000, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any further discussion? And what we're voting on is a motion to approve $700,000 as a funding addition for the SR 143 project. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nagi, for bringing that to our attention and getting the additional funding available.
Next item is 10B. This is the Vineyard Infrastructure Bank loan modification recommendation. We brought this yesterday to the staff update meeting, had a pretty detailed discussion on the proposal. In summary, it basically is Vineyard is requesting to have flexibility in using the SIB loan that they received to be able to do different things which are listed. They also have requested to start the loan over, essentially starting in 2017 and doing a 10-year for the full amount again. So the 16.15 million is the request as well. I was asked to find some information as far as the interest rate. So the bond rate for capitalizing the SIB was 2.87, which we mentioned yesterday. The two projects that, or two SIB loans that came to the commission that we did an adjustment on the interest rate, not necessarily following the guidelines, actually was for the Fountain Green loan as well as the Vineyard loan. What I could find is we set those both at 3% in the Ogden Commission meeting, which was in July of 2013. I found in my emails that the State Treasurer's Office had sent me back their bond rate at that time was 2.56, so with the year term, it would have been 356, and so we did hold it to 3 for both of them.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
The mayor from Vineyards here, I don't know if he would like to speak.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that this loan modification be approved. Are there questions? I think the mayor from Vineyard is here.
Hey, commissioners, you handled it very well. You did a great job.
Oh, you mean you're not gonna say anything because we're about to approve this thing?
No rock.
We haven't taken a vote yet. Well, we can fabricate some of that just to make your trip worthwhile.
Well, I'm not much to emboss on things that don't need to be embossed on.
Well, there was a significant discussion yesterday on the reason for all of this change.
So I think right now the interest rate would be 2.91 for the 10-year term.
Based on the guidelines.
Based on the guidelines, yes.
Right.
Another question I was gonna ask is this, we were successful bringing that interest rate.
If you recall, and if you recall that the town of Vineyard had requested Greg, what was the rate that you were asking for?
Well, we were being extremely optimistic in asking for 2, because the state recent borrowing was 1.9.
Right, so that was based on, I think the logic there was based on what the recent bonding was. Yesterday's discussion, we said, that when the legislature capitalized this, they actually issued bonds to capitalize this $20 million, and that rate was the 2.87. And so you've got 3 different proposals in front of you. You have the guideline number, you have the request from the city, and the actual rate that was used to generate this revenue in front of you for your decision making. Is that?
To just keep the number that was.
Okay, so then the motion needs to include the interest rate that's to be charged, or just to mention that it's to be.
The motion, you should decide. You can make this motion, you can do this in several steps. You can choose to provide the additional flexibility as requested by the city. You could choose to, reset the loan to a 10-year loan, bringing it back to the 16.15, and then it's the interest rate. So there's really 3 decisions, and you can make them together, or you can make them individually.
So the rate would be 2.91.
2.91 is the current.
I'll amend my motion to approve to include 2.91 interest rate.
But to approve the other issues, renewing the 10-year loan.
And the flexibility.
And the 2.91 is the interest rate.
Yes.
Second. It has been moved and seconded. Is any further discussion or clarification needed? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, that's been approved. Thank you. All right, we have a very active corridor preservation group this last month. And again, it looks like we've got 9 projects to consider. Lyle?
That's right.
Walk us through these in about 10 minutes.
You recall last month we had 12, so this is a reduction.
Oh, you've been taking it easy this last month.
Yeah, we're trying to reduce your workload. You hear that giant sucking sound? It's coming from Region 1.
Yeah, all 9 of these projects were in Davis County.
That's correct. Okay, so our let's go ahead and start with
Nothing in Morgan County yet, but we're getting there.
We're coming.
Okay.
Start with the fund balance. Our balance forward as of August 29th was $20.6 million. We had about 2 months worth of revenue because we had the year end, and that was 1.2. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 property purchases in the interim, and just miscellaneous expenses that total 2.7. When those are netted out, we have a fund balance of $19 million. Commission has previously obligated funds totaling $17.4 million, and we have the status of those there on that far right-hand column. We have two that are semi-unusual in that the third and the fourth say withdraw, and we're going to talk about those first in just a sec. But that leaves us an unobligated fund balance of $1.6 million. We have 1.9, almost $2 million worth of applications today. So if we just left it the way it is and went forward and all of those were approved, we would actually be in the negative, which is not advisable. So we've identified two pieces of property that we do not believe are going to move forward because the property owners have rejected our offers. And we didn't want to assume that you would go along with that, so we put in two scenarios, and that's why we have this far right column, and that is in the event that you choose to deobligate the two that we recommend, that would add 2.2 million back into the fund, which would give us an unobligated fund balance of $3.8 million, which, when the 1.9 was netted out, would leave us $1.8 million in the black.
You need a motion to deobligate those funds?
We're going to talk about those each individually.
Okay.
Right after this, after you're comfortable with the fund balance.
So 2.2 that you talked about is going to come from the 12 the WDC that they withdraw?
Yes. Okay. All right, if everybody's comfortable, let's move ahead to 11A. This is the first de-obligation request. It is on the West Davis corridor. It's in Kaysville. The property was originally approved for an offer back in March of 2016, so it's been about a year and a half. It was on the Shepherd Lane alignment, which is not the preferred alignment. It was a single-family residence, $455,000, and the property owner has said, no thanks, we'll take our chances. So we reviewed it in the advisory council, Corridor Preservation Advisory Council, and I come to you with a affirmative recommendation to de-obligate funding from Corridor Preservation Revolving Loan Fund in the amount of $455,000.
Moved and seconded that we de-obligate these funds. Any further questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, de-obligate.
So the second one's in tab 11B, and this one is a vacant piece of property, 20 acres in Davis County, and it's in the county. It's just outside of the city. They've been trying to get it annexed. We talked about this again last March as well, and the property owner declined our offer. It was $1.7 million. If you'll recall, we talked about the gentleman who owns the property is trying to develop it, but because of the topography, he would need to build a sewer lift station and some other things that would make it challenging at best to be able to develop that property, and that's one of the reasons why it hasn't been able to be annexed, etc. Again, it is in the preferred alignment, and so the alternative there is just we wait for the project to happen, and then whatever's in place at that time, we buy it fair market value with an appraisal at the time that the project is funded. So I come to you with a recommendation and request to de-obligate funds in the amount of $1.745 million and put that back in the fund so that we can use it for willing sellers who want to sell the property.
Why he declined our offer? Was it low? Or?
He doesn't, yeah, the property owner believed the property was worth more. We purchased properties around this property for more because we believe they actually had connection to infrastructure and that there wasn't.
This one does not.
Not present.
And we had appraisal on this one, so the official appraisal was in. Yeah, okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we de-obligate these funds. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're now flush.
How we can spend the money?
For how long?
We now have $3.8 million that are de-obligated. Okay, so let's go into the applications, and that is the first one's under tab 11C, and it's Joe and Rosanna Hill. It's in Layton. It's in the preferred alignment of the West Davis corridor. It's vacant land. They've been owners of this property for over 2 decades. They are under contract with the developer to purchase the property and are willing to do a simultaneous closing with us to sell what we need under the alignment and not have to buy it from the developer after he's or she's done their part. So currently it's zoned single family, 15,000 square foot minimum lot sizes, which is pretty small. It's 1/3 acre. And property needed for the project is about 4 acres. We had it appraised $602,000, about $150,000 an acre. No water shares. We're also, you'll notice that there's a little triangle that's south of the corridor. We would be required to offer to purchase that immutable uneconomic remnant. So that is also included in the request. And we discussed it in the advisory council, and I come to you today with an affirmative recommendation to obligate funding in the amount of the appraised value of $602,000 so that we can preserve this part of the corridor.
Move to approve.
Second. Moved and seconded that we approve this purchase. Further discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that's been approved.
Thank you. All right, the next one is 11D. And you'll notice that we haven't moved very far. Just a tiny bit to the west. Same last name. This is Tracy and Jean Hill. They've had this property for just over 1 decade. And it's the same zoning as the property next door that you just approved. The property within the corridor is 2 acres. And because of the way that we're purchasing the top piece and the part that's in the corridor, that makes the other piece without access. And so we'd be required to purchase that as well. So that is part of that 2 acres and no water shares. We reviewed that in the advisory council, and I also come to you with a affirmative recommendation to approve funding in the amount of $301,000, which is the appraised value.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this purchase be approved. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
All right, next one is 11E, also West Davis corridor. This is a property owned by Rampton Trust. It's on 1743 South Bluff Road in Syracuse. It's also vacant land. And they've owned the property for about 25 years. They are under contract with the developer to create residential lots. Those are the purple polygons you see there. The zoning is residential. Property that we need is in the green piece. You'll notice that because of the cross streets, etc., we will be creating a cul-de-sac and then that road that comes around from the east. And so we need that piece on the south of that lot. We're recommending that we purchase the entire lot on the south and then just enough up there to do the cul-de-sac turnaround piece from that top purple lot. That's 0.32 acres. We had it appraised. It came in at $127,600. And the advisory council has recommended approval of the amount of $127,600 to preserve those pieces of property so that they don't get built on.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that this purchase be approved. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next one's 11F. Property owner's name is Grant Call. This is also in West Davis corridor in Layton. It's a vacant lot and a single family home. gentleman's owned this for over half a century. The home was built in 1960. It's on 1 acre. The vacant lot, I don't think it's next door, just it's a lot over, is just a vacant lot you can see in the picture there. We appraised them both together. It came in at $455,100 and split out. The value of the 1 acre lot there on the north is $155,000, and the one with the home on it is $300,100. So it's in the preferred alignment of the West Davis corridor there. We purchased the property there you see in blue just to the east and north. And next we'll be talking about the brown piece in the middle is the next one. So I come to you with a favorable recommendation from the advisory council to acquire, to authorize funding so that we can make an offer in the amount of $455,100.
Motion to approve as requested.
Second. Moved and seconded that we approve this purchase. Is there any further discussion or clarification? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to 11G. Today's Neighbor Day. Use the same picture, just change the colors. So the one in the middle is owned by Ron and Janet Hager, and they've owned the property for almost 30 years. It's a single-family residence with a big backyard. We had it appraised, and it came in at $335,000. It's about 25 years younger than the house next door, so it's a little bit more. I come to you with a favorable recommendation to approve that amount so you can preserve this property.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded that this additional property be purchased. Any further questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Now we own that neighborhood.
Little by little. I was just checking with Diane.
You must have made some announcement about the preferred alignment of West Davis.
I don't know. Yeah. But I just was talking with Diane and we did some quick figures. We spent over $30 million on water preservation on West Davis corridor.
Wow.
It's a pretty big number. All right, so 11H, Larry and Dixie Call. This is a piece of property in Layton. It's been in the family for over 20 years. And if you look, again, Neighbor Day, we have just a triangle just up above the two properties that you just approved. Property's 1/10 of an acre, bare ground, appraised for $17,000, and we'll have that whole thing in next month if you follow the advisory council's recommendation to authorize funding in the amount of $17,000.
No pressure.
No pressure, yeah.
Sales price is?
I so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we make this big purchase. Any further comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and the final one, we're moving off of the West Davis corridor to the 1800 North corridor in Clinton, and Diane was driving down the corridor. She was speaking to some property owners, and she saw a home with a for sale sign in front of it. And she called the realtor. It was under contract. She contacted the realtor and asked them if they knew about the corridor. And as things turned out, they decided that they prefer to sell to us instead. So the appraisal is $215,000, and I've taken away Diane's driving privileges. Yeah. So we get more money in the fund.
I thought you'd give her a bouquet of roses.
She does a wonderful job.
Move for approval.
Second. Any more explanation? No. Okay.
Been moved and seconded that this purchase be approved. Any further discussion or comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Second.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lyle. Now I think we have some stewardship section. I think, Bill, you've got, you're going to talk to us a little bit about a commission policy update.
Yes, this will just be brief. This is an update for UTC 0101. We talked about this yesterday, staff update meeting. You've got a copy there that has the changes, mainly some wordsmithing that occurred, as well as some additional definitions that weren't in there before. So just, it's out there for you to take a look at. We'll bring it next month for approval.
All right. Thank you very much. Is Linda here?
You get me.
Okay. For everybody's knowledge, the legislature this last spring organized a task force made up of 16 people from around the state to evaluate the governance, the funding, and the land use surrounding transportation in the state of Utah. The various groups have been meeting through the summer and are closing in on some recommendations. We thought it appropriate to give an update on some of the activity that's been going on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carlos Braceras, Utah DOT. Are we okay?
Yeah, we're okay.
Other than Danny's
I'm just
freezing.
grumbling about the cold.
I think it's nice.
Yeah.
You can hang aside the beach
Not
in
under
here.
it.
You're not on the hot side of the microphone.
I am beside the beach.
Linda was scheduled to do this, and Linda Hull and Elizabeth Wade from our office have been really doing a lot of work to help support the
Tremendous
task
work
force.
and very good work.
And as I was driving down yesterday with Commissioner Holbrook in the pouring rain and realizing it was going to be raining today, I called Linda up and I said, Linda, you stay and work in the office and send me something for me to use during the commission meeting, and I'll do your piece. So I'm going to read what Linda's put together, and she's asked that I not get off script. So we did talk, we have briefed the commission in April at the commission workshop about the task force, and so we wanted to provide this update, as the chairman mentioned. Just as a reminder, the driver behind the creation of the task force, legislative leaders are concerned about the sustainability of transportation funding mechanisms and whether current low-density growth patterns and current governance structures divided between state and local entities will be able to meet the state's growing needs and sustain Utah's economic vitality. Of particular concern to legislators is transit viability, which is exclusively governed and funded at the local level. Task force membership, the chairman mentioned this, is representation from the state legislature, local governments, and the private sector, and it does include a representative from this commission. Chairman Millington has been serving in that role, and I know Commissioner Holbrook, I think, attended and represented the chairman during some of that as well. The task force has identified a mission, which is enhance and strengthen Utah's economy and quality of life now and for the next 50 years by refining transportation governance and funding structures to enable cooperative, seamless, efficient, multimodal, and integrated transportation systems that advance domestic and international commerce, preserve infrastructure, improve safety, and optimize mobility. So we're going to solve the world's problems with this task force.
Recommendations coming out in December will
solve the world's problems.
The world's going to be a great place to be.
The task force chairs have divided the work into 3 working groups: one governance, led by Senator Harper, one on funding, led by Representative Christopherson, and another one on land use, economic development, rural issues, active transportation, and aviation, and that's been led by Representative Schultz. Each of the working groups have met multiple times to identify issues and identify potential strategies to achieve the task force mission. Chairman Millington, the funding working group, Utah has representatives on each of the working groups, local governments, organizations, including the League, UAC, and MPOs, all are participating on the working groups. And the working groups are finalizing recommendations and will present their reports to the full task force in early October. Task force has met 5 times and will conclude at the end of this year with only 2 remaining meetings. The task force will present a final report to the Transportation Interim Committee no later than the November interim committee meetings. The interim committee may take the recommendations of the task force and develop legislative recommendations for consideration by the full legislature in the 2018 general session. Some of the issues currently under discussion with the task force and working groups, and again, remember, there have been no final decisions or even recommendations made at this point. But there's been discussions about the importance of maintaining the investment levels that we have today in transportation, about optimizing the public investment in transportation by adopting a more integrated multimodal governance and funding structure at the state level, numerous discussions of strategies to improve the link between land use decisions and transportation, and these have been very interesting discussions on those. Authorizing the value capture funding tools to help offset the cost of transportation projects, things such as tax increment financing. So we already have a TIF. A lot of people refer to tax increment financing as TIF as well, so we'd have to be clear about that. Authorizing the department to conduct a road usage charge demonstration study as a potential future replacement for the fuel tax. Retaining and enhancing the current project prioritization process used by the Commission, potentially extending the prioritization to other modes of transportation other than just roads. And strategies to target transportation investment that enhances the state's economic growth, job creation, and vibrant communities that support mixed-use development and access to opportunity. Mr. Chairman, that concludes Linda's report that I hopefully have read accurately, and I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Any questions from the commissioners about the task force or its function?
Is on track to be ready by December?
Well, again, they're gearing up to make recommendations to and report to the Transportation Interim Committee. There's no interim meetings in December, so that'll be in November. So what I would anticipate is those recommendations in November with probably a conclusion in December of the task force to kind of wrap up a final report.
Yeah, the next task force meeting is
October 6th or something?
October 2nd?
First week of October.
Yeah, first week of October. And then there will be one more early in November to finalize the recommendations to go to the interim committee in November. So that I think is kind of the schedule. 2 more task force meetings.
Mr. Chairman, you seeing these as being productive? I mean, you've been there. Are they really putting their suspenders on and working?
The answer to that I think is yes. Okay. We actually, Linda Hull actually kind of led the charge on this road usage charge proposal. Got some presentations both out of Washington D.C. and the woman that directs Oregon's program that has completed a study in road user charge. Actually came down and made a presentation. I think that we're going to get authorization from the legislature to move ahead on a road usage charge trial. Good. A test run here of a few hundred people.
We refer to it as a demonstration, and if that is the case, the department would fund that out of our existing research budget.
Right.
And keep the commission apprised
And
of how
so,
that
yes, I think there's been some real valuable input, and I think the recommendations coming out of this will be pleasantly surprising.
Sounds great.
They've been very active in meeting and the proposal that are coming forward, at least at this point.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Chairman.
that.
Have we introduced you to our new aeronautics director?
We are about to be introduced to the new aeronautics director. Believe it or not, we are now entering the phase of department reports to the commission that lead to our April meeting where we do the funding proposals and approvals for the next year. So what we will do for Donna, what we do in between now and March, every commission meeting we will have probably 2 of our departments and regions that will report back to us on their activities and their proposals for the coming year. So now we start looking forward. We hear a report of, today it's aeronautics and communications. Next month there will be a couple more, and we hear each month as we prepare to gather the information that we will then make some decisions on next spring. So we've invited aeronautics and communications, and we have an opportunity to meet our new director. You may remember that Pat Morley had been director for umpteen years and retired, and so we have a new director. We are grateful to have Jared here with us. Please give us a bit of your background, Jared, and introduce yourself to us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here today and the invitation. I joined the Air Force after 9/11. I remember where I was that day, just like everybody does, and it catalyzed me into joining the Air Force. And I served 7 years with the Air Force as a loadmaster on C-17s, flying around the world, based out of Charleston, South Carolina. I got a bachelor's degree in political science from the College of Charleston, and then later went on to work in the White House under George W. Bush in the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, and got my master's in public policy from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government in 2011. I've done some work with the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, which is the world's largest aviation association. I was their director of state government affairs, and now I get the opportunity to serve as aeronautics director here in Utah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
So I being the brand new guy, let me ask, do you have internet capabilities?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, good. I have a little video that I want to show. As the new guy, I wanted to give you a glimpse of what I am seeing with fresh eyes coming into this, and kind of walk you through what I think aeronautics is doing, what we should be doing, and where we're going. Yeah, I'll just get to the slide. So what does aeronautics really do? We have two primary functions. One is to oversee the funding of all the airports in the state, and the other is to manage the fleet of aircraft that the state owns. And I'll break those up, and we'll talk about both of those as I go through here. So when I first came in, I noticed our mission statement on the website, and I thought, well, this is kind of outdated because it still said we certify airports, which we haven't certified airports in a decade. So I thought, let's change this. Let's align what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. Let's do that first. So our new vision in aeronautics is elevate life. We took the Utah motto of life elevated, and everybody does live life elevated here in Utah, and we said our vision is to bring that up just a little bit further. We're going to elevate the quality of life in Utah. We're going to do that in 4 ways. Number one is save taxpayer dollars. Not only through our own budget accounting, but through the statewide travel budgets, one of our goals is to save taxpayer dollars. We know that there are a lot of state employees at state agencies who travel all over the state. They do so at price X. 3 people in a car, driving 5.5 hours from Salt Lake to St. George, staying overnight in a hotel, working all day, driving back, it costs price X. We want to come in and offer an alternative at price Y. And that's what our goal is. We're going to try and make it so that aviation is an alternative form of transportation at a very feasible and reasonable price. Number 2, grow Utah's economy. We know that airports all over the country are economic engines for the communities that they're in. So as we build our airports, we want to create a continuous system plan to generate economic development in all of our communities, both in the Metroplex region and in the rural communities. We're going to promote aviation as an alternative means of transportation. UDOT is all about roads. We have a ferry, which I learned about. But there is, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what's coming in the future as aviation becomes a very feasible alternative means of transportation. And then we're going to ensure a culture of safety. I wasn't nervous until I talked to Shane this morning, and he said, my first presentation, I was so nervous, and that made me nervous. But this couldn't be more timely with the 2 crashes you had mentioned out of Ogden, the one in Butterfield Canyon. This couldn't be more timely of a mission statement for us to ensure a culture of safety across Utah. And I'm not going to get into our strategic goals. This is just a snapshot of them. I wanted you to have them, but we won't get that much into the weeds. So airports, there are 46 public use airports in Utah. We actually own Hanksville Airport, and as you can see the little picture down there, Hanksville is not much more than a landing strip and an apron. We're actually getting our first hangar lease this year, and construction is starting this year. So it's our first building at the Hanksville Airport, and I'm very excited. We also own the Moab VOR DME facility, which is VHF omnidirectional range finding and distance measuring equipment. And we own the Blanding, Delta, and Brigham City AWOS, which is Automated Weather Observation System. Now these are...
That was awesome.
Thank you. The VOR is, what it does is it allows pilots to know exactly where they are in the sky, where they're headed. They can triangulate their position with two VORs in the sky. The AWOS is, as you're flying in, a pilot can get on the radio and listen to the weather being broadcast continuously, and he knows what conditions he's flying into, and he can make the land, don't land decision. So we own those 4 navigational aids. So of the 46, 35 are what we call NIPIUS airports, the National Plan of an Integrated Airport System. So 35 are NIPIUS airports, federally funded. They're eligible for federal funds. 10 are non-NIPIUS airports. They're also eligible for some federal funding, but not a whole lot. It's mostly state funding. And then, unfortunately, we do have one that in the last FAA Asset 2 study in 2014, Milford became unclassified. And that means it is no longer eligible for federal funding. Basically, the FAA says, nationally, we don't see this as an asset. However, the state does see it as an asset. So we're still taking care of that, but I want to let you know that. We can get Milford back into the non-NIPIUS classified airports if it has 10 based aircraft or 10,000 operations a year. So. And then we have about 90 backcountry and private airports. And I've got a little picture of what is a backcountry airport. Basically, it is a dirt strip that has been cleaned. They are small, they are way out of the way. They're often trailheads. So pilots will land and a national or a state park or national park trailhead will begin at the runway, hike through the mountains, and end at the runway. There is no other way to get to that hiking trail except for the runway. Well, the landing strip. And they often look like this. They're great fishing spots, great picturesque spots across Utah. We've got about 90 of those. So if you will play this video, I want to, as we talk about airports, I want to talk about the future. And yeah, you have to go back and click on the...
I'll get there.
You'll get there. It's an actual YouTube video. It's embedded, so you have to click in the middle. All right, go back. Yes, no, maybe so.
Maybe not.
Maybe so.
It's a YouTube video?
It's a YouTube video. It's embedded in. I want to talk about what Airbus is doing as we talk about airports and what UDOT does, as I'll let him work on the video. The Vahana project is science fiction for the most part, right? It is coming. It's coming. But it's science fiction that is being practiced in Sao Paulo, Brazil today. They are testing this system. The Vahana system is vertical takeoff and landing aircraft for what they're calling vertiports. And I can very easily see vertiports being built by the state, much like we build roads from Ogden to Spanish Fort. I can very much see vertiports coming in and us creating highways in the sky at 500 feet. And so you would take off from the airport. If you flew into Salt Lake, you'd have a vertiport at the airport where you would take off, fly into downtown, fly into Spanish Fort, fly up and down the I-15 corridor right there. And I would love for you to be able to see this video. It doesn't need sound. It's just a video, but if you have it.
I have the George Jetson song in my head.
Yes, very much just like them. You can skip the ad. Yeah, it might solve the HOV problem.
So we'll have the individual parachutes, so dropping on the Salt Lake downtown?
Yeah, we'll just drop, we won't even stop, we'll just slow down. People can jump.
It's not your video.
No, that's not my video. That's okay. All right, that's okay. I wish that had played, because it really gives a good description of what the vertiports are, and I can easily see that being a part of an ACIP plan in the next rendition or two. Is let's create a vertiport. So we'll keep going. If you go back to the slide, or the PowerPoint, we'll just keep going. Okay, so real quick glance of what I'm seeing in the ACIP and what we're doing. In 2013, 2014, we got a $5 million shot in the arm where the state said, go build some projects, go improve some airports. And we've done that. You can see the number of airport projects shoot up in 2017 to over 60 projects this year. And it dwindles off, and this is where I'm a little concerned, is that it dwindles off below 30 projects per year by 2022. Not because the limiting factor is us or the FAA, we're just not asking the FAA for those projects. And that really comes from the airports. So one of my jobs is going to be to get the airports to ask for projects, because right now we're just not asking for them 5 years out. State funding, however, you can see again the 2017 shot in the arm. I like this graph. It levels off. It dips down in 2020, 2021, but comes back up in 2022, which tells me if we were to look at this at a very long scale, we fluctuate, but we maintain a plateau, a fairly good plateau. This really concerns me, airport project funding total. This includes our FAA funds, our local sponsor funds, and our state grants. And it is really dipping below the 30 million mark by 2022. It's a constant decrease. And that's only because we're not asking for the money. The money is there. The FAA gets $220 million turned back into it every year. And we can compete for those funds, but not if we're continuing to decrease. So part of my job is going to be to turn this trend around. And how do we do that? Oh, before I discuss that, this is actually a great graph, because we were asked, spend this money. You can see the 2013 $5 million shot in the arm, and we were asked, spend this down, get these projects going. By 2020, you can see most of those projects, most of that money has been spent. Those projects are initiated, implemented, and closed. And 2020 actually comes down to about $115,000. This is the carryover amount in the restricted fund. So, but I will have to say there is a caveat with this graph, is that 2020 $115,000 mark will actually come up for two reasons. One, good problem to have. We collected $1.4 million in aviation fuel tax revenue this year, beyond what we estimated. It's a good problem to have, because what it tells me is that people are flying to Utah and they're buying fuel. Those are good things. So that line will actually come back up, and we'll have to spend it back down. The other reason I believe this line will come up is because we are trying to go out and get aircraft compliant with the Utah registration law. The FAA reports 7,202 aircraft registered in Utah, and they include all aircraft, whether they're flying or not. They could be laying in pieces in a hangar, but that aircraft is registered with the FAA. Utah only registers active flying aircraft. Right now we have 2,650 on our registered rolls. We estimate that's about 48% compliance. So do the math, there are about 5,500 aircraft in Utah that should be registered. That's about $1.1 million that we're not collecting. It's just uncollected funds. So we're looking at solutions for that, and that'll bring that line up. Okay, so airports to the current aircraft fleet. Let's talk about aircraft. Right now we've got the King Air B200, the King Air C90, and the Cessna 206. They operate at $1,200, $935, and $195 per hour respectively. And I have been hearing, the aircraft are too expensive, we can't use them, and everything or they have limitations, and everything that I've heard seem to be symptoms. And I think the root problem is, and this is just my perspective coming in all of 3 months, is that the root problem, rather than the symptoms, are we're not addressing the right mission. So we've got 6 and 8 passenger aircraft, but our 2 to 3 passenger aircraft isn't utilized a lot, mostly because the avionics in it are outdated. We are fixing that problem right now. We're going to market that one a little bit better. So we're going to reimagine and repurpose the fleet a little bit. We are looking at replacing our very, very old C90 with something a little more modern, a little more capable, being our flagship. We're going to market the 206 a little bit better once we have new avionics in it. It's more of a capable aircraft. And then we're looking at other aircraft. And I didn't want to bring in, after talking with my pilots and mechanics, I didn't want to throw aircraft options out to you, but I do want to give you what our constraints are that we're innovating within. And that is every state engine, I talk to some state employees and state agencies, and they say, we travel 2 to 3 people at a time. We don't travel in large groups. It's 2 to 3 people. And so I've kind of given the pilots and mechanics, let's find a transportation means that is 2 to 3 passengers, low hourly operating costs, and can expand our current mission capacity so that we can provide for UDOT and for other state agencies that very thing they need at a very low cost, so that price X for driving and price Y for flying, there is a clear gap. And then finally, thinking way in the future, as vertiports and spaceports and everything else comes in, and as Cassini makes its last dive for Saturn, what's the Utah fleet look like then? Yeah, but I get dibs on the call sign Red 5. That's my So other than that, I'll take any questions or answer any questions I could.
So we're operating pretty much at capacity?
With the aircraft?
Yeah.
The 2 King Airs fly fairly regularly. In the words of my mechanics, maintenance-wise, they're talking to us. When the C90 is 20 years old, it's really talking. The B200 we can squeeze a few more years out of, but the C90 is really talking to us. But we do fly them as much as we can.
Yeah.
We push them.
Is that the one we put the new engine in a couple of years ago?
Both of them have new engines.
They both have.
They both have new engines. It was cheaper than overhauling the engine.
And it's talking to us, huh?
It's talking to us. It's the airframe itself is just old.
Well, that's nice to know.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
Well, and that's just like anything else.
No. Hey, believe me, I'd love to have a whole lot of little jets sitting around them, but that's interesting. So it's talking to us. How loud is it talking?
Well, it's about to start screaming at us. The maintenance curve, the maintenance curve for a jet comes up, or not a jet. The maintenance curve for any aircraft, about 3 to 5 years, comes up exponentially. It plateaus out, and then when you hit that 15 mark, comes up. But at that 20, you've got that exponential curve, and it's going to begin to be a real cost problem. I mean, if it's expensive now, it's only going to get more expensive as we have to put more parts into it.
I always like to talk about
Any other questions or comments for Jared?
Well, I have just one. So you showed the map with all of the pictures of airplanes across the state, and a few of those have commercial aviation, St. George, Cedar, Moab. What's our relationship with those commercial operators? Oh, and of course Salt Lake, going to 300 places around the world. Do we maintain a relationship with them? Do we have a relationship with Salt Lake International? How do some of those other parts of the business work?
Absolutely. So one of the first things that I have done in for my first 90 days here is get to know some of the executives at Delta. I'm right now being introduced to a couple of people at SkyWest. Matter of fact, we are lengthening, strengthening, and widening the runway at Moab so that they can continue to come in and we can continue to meet that 10,000 employments at Moab. And we do work with those. Absolutely, we work with those. Our relationship with Salt Lake right now is very good. I sit on a board with Dave Corsi. I'll never pronounce his last name right. So we work very well together. He's the director of operations. Dave Tegans, who's the director of the General Aviation South Valley 2 Tooele Airports. Our relationship is very good. Very much looking forward to the new executive director coming in over there and getting to know them and work with them very closely. One of the things, you know what? Let me not go too far. Let me not put my foot.
Well, we can have a conversation offline too. So where are the state planes based?
Salt Lake International.
Okay. On the general side.
on the general side. We're the southernmost hangar on the general aviation side of the airport.
You know, so you said it looked like it would be good to get a new King Air. Is that what I read?
So if we can do that, I think it would. I think it would be good to have a good flagship.
Seats 10.
It has the capacity to seat 10. Most of anything that we're looking at, like I said, one of the constraints is low hourly operating cost. At most, I would like to charge $100 per person per hour. That's kind of the constraint I've put on us. Let's not exceed that. So that King Air right there would operate at or below $1,000 per hour. Increase our capacity, increase our mission, but at or below. But these are options, not plans.
And Jared is presenting ideas that this does not represent the department's position, and it's not going to be part of our budget proposal, will not be part of the governor's budget proposal. These are funded, aircraft operations and the purchase of aircrafts are all decided by the legislature. They're funded out of the aeronautics restricted account. And so all of this takes years of working. So he's doing some initial groundwork, but we're still years away from even thinking about making a recommendation.
I know, but I was getting excited.
Well, I was trying to not have Carlos get up and have to, but too late.
But that's good to remember.
Yeah.
I always wonder with SkyWest, because they're getting rid of a lot of their RJs, if they would make a deal on some of the smaller RJs that they're putting out in the desert and
well, that's
just
a thought.
Down the road.
It's a thought. But again, these are, we do want to market. Our plan is to market the 206 better because we have that right now. That's an asset we have. Anything else is options and options only. It's just I want you to see my industry standard.
I've ridden on that. You have to get them on.
Well, it'd be nice to have retractable gear.
Well, if you've never ridden on the little Cessna, it's a different flying.
It's fun. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much.
Welcome to UDOT.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got, where's Joe?
Hiding here. He likes to make an entrance.
If you just switch it over, just switch it over and he can go ahead.
Joe, you ready?
You ready?
I'm ready. I'm looking at the time and wondering if you want to wait for.
Well, how long is your report?
It's longer than 3 minutes.
Do we have a deadline to get
Have fun giving it to yourself. I'm leaving.
I'm happy to go ahead.
Is that a suggestion?
I'm happy to go ahead if you'd like me to. I just want to give you that option.
Some of us have to go.
At your pleasure, Mr. Chairman. At your pleasure. You're in charge.
Well, if you're gonna go about 10 minutes, why don't we do it?
Yep.
I will make it work in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Look, you've got serious stuff. Stand. He's gonna move around.
Well, I have to go over here because.
Oh no, he's going to be the showman.
He was aiming to rap.
Well, we were having some discussions about what that shadow looks like. What the BYU fans are saying it looks like the top of a pineapple. The University of Utah fans are saying it looks like marijuana. So
Medical.
I thought it was a propellant.
Some of us Utah fans have no idea what it looks like.
Yeah, thank you. We're not going on the record on that.
it's not moving. There we go. Okay, we did the presentation you just saw talked a little bit about vision and what the vision is, and we like the aeronautics division. We also have a vision for our future. Of course, here at UDOT, our vision is keeping Utah moving. That's a very simple, concise vision statement. Our job here at the Utah Department of Transportation is to keep Utah moving. At the communications division, we believe that nobody moves until we say so. Not because we give you permission, but because we're telling people how to move, where to move, why to move, when to move, and that's a big part of what we do. We try to serve all of the strategic goals of the Utah Department of Transportation. We're very involved in our Zero Fatalities program. In our program, it belongs under the Department of Operations and Traffic Safety. That's their department, but we're very involved with them in our Zero Fatalities outreach. We don't believe that there is any other goal but zero fatalities, and we're working very hard towards that. We're involved in preserving infrastructure. We do a lot of the communicating with the projects, that when projects are going on, when we're doing bridge maintenance, on road maintenance, we're very involved in that. We're involved in optimizing mobility with our UDOT traffic programs, with our app, again, not exactly under our department, but we're very involved with trying to communicate to the public and let them know how to move, where to move, and when to move. For us, it's not just about communicating, but it's about communicating strategically, working with the media. We are blessed to have the best public information officer in the state, and John Gleason. He has developed great relationships of trust and understanding with the media and does a terrific job of representing them, of serving them. We come from a really media-oriented, media-centric philosophy in our communications division. 6 of us have worked as full-time media members, some of us longer than others, and we understand that media is not the enemy. They have a job to do, and we're there to serve them and to help them do their job, and they, in turn, help us communicate to people and let people know what's going on. So we work very closely with them. We've really stepped up our presence on social media. We're very grateful to have Zach Whitney with us now, who's really working on all of our social media platforms. I'll share you a little bit more about what's going on in those. We're very involved in project communications. Of course, a lot of that happens with consultants that we have working with our regional communication managers, and they're trying to communicate to people what's going on with our projects. We try and always communicate 3 things: coping messages, how to get around, how to deal with the construction, progress messages, keeping people informed of what's happening with the projects, and then the vision. We want people to understand what it is we're trying to accomplish over the long term. And we work very closely on a regular basis with our paid consultants who do most of that communicating. It's particularly the door-to-door, boots on the ground, knock on people's doors, walk in people's businesses, and let them know what's going on. And we have some terrific consultants that do really, really good work and really made a difference in talking to people. We've really stepped up our employee communications. We have a new website that I'll show a little bit to you in just a second. An employee website. We're doing a lot more. Now, we don't use the money that we get from the legislature and that you appropriate to us. Is that how it works? We don't use that money for employee communications. That comes out of my operating budget. The money that we get from you guys is just outreach for projects. So, but we have stepped that up. We have a terrific, Becky Parker does a great job managing the UDOT website. We have over 1 million visits every year. In fact, we're getting close to 1 million already for this year. A lot of people come wanting traffic information, wanting project information. The legislators come to our website. You folks come to our website. Over 1 million visits a year for each of the past 5 years. We're going to go way over that this year because we're way ahead of that rate. So Becky does a good job patching, trying to keep that thing functioning. It's old. Our website's old. It's about 10 years old. We need to fix it. We need to update it, and we're in the process of doing so. We've been able to find a way that we can do that. Thanks to Shane. Thank you for helping us find that money. And so we're going to be adding to that. The traffic app, again, is not under us, but we have over 500,000 subscribers to the website, to the traffic app, and I think it makes a difference in helping people know what's going on our roads. Again, looking at some things that we can do with the app to improve it and expand it as time goes on. Our VMS messaging that happens under our Zero Fatalities group. Boy, I don't know that anything's happened with us in the last few years that's given us as much attention as this does. We get lots of media stories about this. We get a lot of comments from people. Our public opinion surveys tell us that 95% of people see our VMS messaging that we're doing, and most of them like it. Not all. Some people really hate it, but most of them like it. And about 64% of them say that it's affected their driving behaviors, and that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people's attention. We're trying to make them think. We're trying to get them to change, to buckle up their seatbelts, to put their cell phones down. We're trying to get them to do those things, and to a certain extent, that seems to be working. We also do a lot of public and trade presentations. Carlos and Shane do a lot of presentations. You have no idea how much they're out there talking to people. Carlos is all over the country, and we have people working with him to help him prepare those presentations, to present UDOT in the best possible way. They do a great job with that. We also are involved in a number of events around the country, around the state, sharing our messages. Now, I'll resolve all of this communication. Well, it's not just the communication, it's also the good work that the engineers and our construction people do too. So it's not just communication, but some communications. This is sort of how our favorability ratings has gone through since 2001. Now, I was a part of the I-15 reconstruction project in Salt Lake County back there in 2001 that concluded in 2001, and we were thrilled with a 73% favorability rating. We thought that was extraordinary. And for a state government agency, that really is a high number. All of these numbers are, for a state agency, are really high as far as favorability is concerned. You can see it's largely an upward trend. There have been some dips around the time of once we started Legacy Parkway in about 2005, 2006. There was a little bit of a public dip there after the litigation period. That was kind of a low point. We've had a couple of little dips here and there as we've gone along. We reached a peak about 80%. 80% favorability rating for a state agency is extraordinary. And that was right at the completion of the I-15 core project. We're on a little bit of it down now. We were again 73% last year. I don't know what to say about the fact that last slope that you see was during the 2 years that I've been here. I don't think the two are connected, but time will tell. There's been a lot to communicate about this year. Over 2,300 news stories this year. You can see it's about what you would expect. There's a number of news things that were going on the first part of the year, but boy, it ratchets way up when we get into the construction season, and a lot of stories have been going on. The thing that's interesting to me about these stories is this is about what it looks like. Now, that people think that big gray area is not cool. That's neutral, and that's exactly what we want to see. I want to see stories where they're just telling our story. They're neither positive nor negative. It's just giving people information. And to us, 91% neutral is a good thing. Now, there's still some decidedly positive stories, and there's some decidedly negative stories. But by and large, most of the stories that we see in our news coverage is neutral. But we're not just bound these days by what you see on television, radios, newspaper. We're not just bound by what the media covers. We're able to tell our own story these days because of social media, because of the outreach that we have. We're able to do things that we can tell. I'm aware of some departments of transportation, California Department of Transportation comes to mind, where they've kind of stopped worrying about the media, having the media tell their story. They're just telling it themselves on social media. And we're really stepping up our video coverage. Zach has really brought us to a new level of video coverage because we haven't had somebody with his proficiency with video, so we're doing a lot more video, both on our social media and as well as in our employee communications. We just hired someone else that's going to come to work for us. We've hired, but they say he was the best videographer at Channel 4, and he's going to come work for us too. We're really trying to press, because this is how you communicate with people. Even on social media, they want to look at videos. They don't want to just read words. They want to look at videos, and so that's what we've been giving them. In the interest of time, I was going to show you some videos. We'll send them to you. I'm going to skip over the videos. I'm going to show you some of the outreach stuff that we're doing, but that would take us a few minutes to get through it. But I did bring popcorn, so we'll get that to you as well. So I'll give you some example of these are some of the reactions we did. One of the videos I was going to show you is the time lapse we did just this last week of 106 South. We're moving a bridge or a tunnel, basically a tunnel, into place. We had let me just check my numbers here because I had them give me the newest numbers this morning. We've had almost 150,000 hits on that video, and it's getting retweeted and shared all over the place. People love stuff, and the best part of the video is a little skeleton they put on top of the tunnel as it was moving into place, so it looks like a pirate ship that's moving. It's cool. Anyway, these are some of the reactions we get on the time lapse. As you can see, it's extraordinary, overwhelming. A guy from Texas wants to come work for us. These people saying that UDOT is amazing. The rest of the country needs to go to these folks. One of the time lapses that makes it look like it's really fast. But anyway, it's we get really good feedback and really good comments on these things. Here's an employee website that we're doing. We have video components there with our top segments that we've shared with you in the past. We have employee spotlights that are really interesting. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip through those. Basically, to give you a sense, on Facebook, we share a lot of our videos on Facebook, and they get a lot of penetration. In video views on Facebook, about 10,000 hours of people have spent watching our videos on Facebook. That's to me, that's a lot. On Twitter, we have official UDOT Twitter accounts. We have a couple of other project accounts, but 8 official UDOT Twitter accounts, about 70,000 followers, nearly 500,000 impressions last month from our Twitter work, and so we feel like we're getting our messages out. Now, just quickly on the budget. This is what you've given me in the past. It's about $645,000, and that's been for the past several years. That's how we kind of spread it out. The biggest chunk of it goes for our traffic outreach and our project and our communications on trying to get people to go out. A lot of that is advertising. Another $100,000 travel-wise, $95,000 for
some money to Hurricane City to buy properties for the Purgatory Road alignments, and also 2 properties for the 300 West.
So, with the way things are going, we need to expand the road to Purgatory. I can tell you that.
So the highlight of my month was the Jim McConnell's retirement party. It was awesome. Just a beautiful setting on the Cedar Mountain. The weather was perfect, and the food was superb, and the company was delightful. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Nagi. Wayne?
I was unable to attend the corridor preservation meeting. However, Mr. Kramer did make it, so, and you saw the results here today. I attended the Cash MPO Executive Council meeting, and on Tuesday, we attended a meeting with Chris Peterson and myself and a lady named Crystal Howe, who heads up a committee for safety concerns at the new Ridgeline High in Millville.
Okay.
That's it.
Very good, thank you. I've attended several of the meetings of the task force that Carlos reported on, both the funding and the task force. In addition, I was at the JPAC meeting where a lot of that was reported out, a very good meeting, and the MAG meeting this last month. Now, one of the requests for the commissioners to think about has come that in lieu of this verbal report here, maybe we submit written reports that then become part of the minutes. Something to think about. We don't need a decision today, but the suggestion has been made that we submit written reports to Heather to include with the minutes. It could be reviewed. So think about that as an option to this kind of.
I think that's a good idea. I think we'll do it.
Yeah, brief, right?
Yeah, just brief written report. It's something like we've just done here that we can then forward to Heather, and she includes them as part of the minutes that get reviewed and become part of the public record anyway.
Can I do them first?
Yes, you can do it in whichever language.
I'd like to see that.
Whichever language you want to write it, that'd be great. That would be unique to have a report in Farsi.
Question about it, I promise.
Looking forward, if there is, we'll question where the source. Looking forward, we've got facility utilized by the UDOT people. It's really well done. Everybody would be amazed to see it. It's really a nice facility. Thank you, Carlos. What else do we need to bring up?